Good evening, dear listener. Tonight we return once again to the forgotten folds of history in search of moments that shaped the world in quiet ways. Whether you're cozy in bed or listening with closed eyes, I'm glad you're spending this peaceful time here. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. Are you just waking up or about to drift off with the past whispering in your ear? If you're enjoying these calm passages through time, please do subscribe. There are many more nights like this ahead. The Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the oldest stories ever told, originating from the ancient Sumerian civilization over 4,000 years ago. It follows the journey of Gilgamesh, a semi-divine king of Uruk, who is two-thirds god and one-third human. Despite his extraordinary strength, wisdom, and beauty, Gilgamesh is a flawed ruler, marked by arrogance and cruelty, causing suffering among his people. In response to the people's cries, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man, to challenge Gilgamesh and balance his excessive power. The two initially clash in a fierce battle, but instead of remaining enemies, they form a deep, transformative bond of friendship. Together, they embark on heroic quests, the most famous being their journey to the cedar forest, where they confront the monstrous Humbaba, ultimately angering the gods. However, the greatest twist in the story occurs when Ishtar, the goddess of love, proposes to Gilgamesh. After he rejects her, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish him, but Gilgamesh and Enkidu defeat it. The gods, enraged by their defiance, decide that one must die. Enkidu falls ill and dies, leaving Gilgamesh devastated, forcing him to confront the inevitable truth of mortality. Unable to accept Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh sets out on a desperate quest to find immortality. His journey takes him to Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood and was granted eternal life by the gods. Utnapishtim shares his story of survival, revealing that immortality is a divine gift, unattainable by mortals. In a test of endurance, Gilgamesh fails to stay awake for 7 days and nights, marking the beginning of his realization that immortality is not meant for humans. Returning to Uruk, now transformed by his journey, Gilgamesh accepts that the key to true immortality lies not in defying death, but in leaving a lasting legacy. His story teaches us profound lessons about friendship, mortality, and the meaning of life. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just a tale of heroism and adventure, but a meditation on the human condition and the timeless quest for meaning in a world marked by impermanence. The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest known in human history, emerged in the southern part of Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, around 4000 BCE. This civilization is often credited with laying the foundation for the development of writing, urbanization, and complex societal structures. The people of Sumer developed one of the first written languages, cuneiform, using wedge-shaped marks on clay tablets. The Sumerians were not a unified people, but consisted of several city-states, including Uruk, Ur, Lagash, and Nippur, each with its own king and deity. Despite this political fragmentation, Sumerian culture and innovations spread throughout the region, influencing future civilizations in Mesopotamia and beyond. At the heart of Sumerian society was religion. The Sumerians believed in a pantheon of gods and goddesses who controlled various aspects of life and nature. Each city-state had its patron god, with the most prominent being Anu, the sky god, Enlil, the god of air and storms, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. These deities were thought to reside in massive temples, with the most significant being the ziggurats, pyramid-like structures built to honor the gods.
The Sumerians believed that their kings ruled as divine representatives on earth, acting as intermediaries between the gods and the people. In addition to their religious achievements, the Sumerians made remarkable strides in agriculture, mathematics, and astronomy. The fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, known as the cradle of civilization, allowed the Sumerians to develop advanced irrigation techniques. These innovations led to a surplus of crops, which in turn supported the growth of cities. The Sumerians were among the first to divide the day into 24 hours, the year into 12 months, and the circle into 360 degrees, all of which were based on their observations of the heavens. Their understanding of mathematics also extended to the creation of a number system based on 60, which is still used today in the division of time and angles. The Epic of Gilgamesh, perhaps the most famous literary work from ancient Sumer, tells the story of the king of Uruk, Gilgamesh, who was 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. The epic explores themes of friendship, mortality, and the search for immortality. Gilgamesh embarks on a journey with his close companion, Enkidu, a wild man created by the gods to be his equal. Together, they undertake great feats, including slaying the monster Humbaba and killing the bull of heaven sent by the goddess Ishtar. However, their actions anger the gods, leading to Enkidu's death. In his grief, Gilgamesh sets out to find the secret of eternal life, only to learn that immortality is reserved for the gods, and humans must accept their fate. The epic is a profound exploration of the human condition and is considered one of the earliest works of literature. The story of the first humans in Sumer is rooted in myth and religion. According to Sumerian creation myths, the gods created humans from clay to serve them and perform the labor of the gods. The myth of Enki and Ninhursag tells of the god Enki who created the first humans by mixing clay with the blood of a slain god. The creation of humans was seen as a divine act, and the first humans were believed to have been given the gift of life by the gods. These early humans were tasked with tending to the gods' needs and maintaining the balance of nature. Over time, the Sumerians developed a complex pantheon of gods, each responsible for different aspects of life and nature, and their relationship with these gods shaped their society. The Sumerians also had a deep respect for their ancestors and believed in an afterlife. However, their view of the afterlife was not one of eternal bliss, but rather a dark, gloomy existence in the underworld, where souls lived in shadow and dust. Despite this, the Sumerians believed that by living a good and pious life, they could gain favor with the gods and secure a place in the afterlife. Burial practices were important, and the wealthy were often buried with grave goods, including food, weapons, and jewelry, to ensure they had everything they needed in the next life. As the Sumerian civilization flourished, it also faced challenges from external forces. The city-states were often at war with each other, and over time the region was invaded by various groups, including the Akkadians, who eventually united Mesopotamia under the rule of Sargon of Akkad. Despite these challenges, the Sumerian legacy endured. The Akkadians adopted many aspects of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, religion, and architectural styles. The Sumerians' innovations in law, government, and administration also influenced later civilizations, including the Babylonians and Assyrians. The Sumerians' contributions to human civilization were not limited to their technological advancements. They also developed one of the earliest systems of written law, known as the Code of Ur-Nammu, which predates the more famous Code of Hammurabi. This code outlined the rights and responsibilities of citizens and provided guidelines for justice and punishment. The Sumerians also developed a sophisticated system of trade, which helped them establish connections with distant regions, including the Indus Valley and the Persian Gulf. Their merchants traded goods such as textiles, pottery, and grain, and in return they acquired luxury items like lapis lazuli and copper. As Sumerian civilization advanced, so did its social structure. Society was divided into several classes, with the king and priests at the top, followed by merchants, artisans, and farmers, and at the bottom, slaves. The king was seen as the representative of the gods on earth and had absolute power, though he was still subject to the will of the gods. The priests played a central role in society, overseeing ceremonies and managing the temples, which were the economic and political centers of the city-states. Merchants and artisans contributed to the economy through trade and craftsmanship, while farmers were the backbone of the civilization, providing the food that sustained the population. The Sumerians were also skilled in medicine, and their understanding of the human body and diseases was advanced for their time. They had a variety of medical texts, which included remedies for illnesses and injuries, as well as prayers to the gods for healing. Doctors were highly respected in Sumerian society, and they were often trained in temples, where they learned the art of healing. By the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, the Sumerian civilization began to decline. Several factors contributed to this decline, including internal strife, invasions by neighboring peoples, and environmental changes, such as the salinization of the soil, which made farming difficult. Despite this, the legacy of the Sumerians lived on through their innovations and cultural achievements. Their influence can be seen in the later civilizations of Mesopotamia and in the development of Western civilization. In conclusion, the Sumerian civilization was one of the most significant in human history. Its contributions to writing, law, religion, and science laid the foundation for future civilizations. The Sumerians' achievements in agriculture, mathematics, and astronomy helped shape the course of human progress, while their myths and literature, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, continue to resonate with people today. Despite the challenges they faced, the Sumerians' impact on the world remains undeniable, and their legacy lives on through the advancements they made in virtually every aspect of life.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the oldest in the world, began to take shape in the southern part of Mesopotamia, in modern-day Iraq, around 4000 BCE. This civilization is often credited with many firsts that laid the foundation for human development, such as the creation of writing, urbanization, and the rise of monumental architecture. The Sumerians are believed to have created cuneiform writing, a system of wedge-shaped marks made on clay tablets, which allowed them to record information, laws, and stories. The Sumerians were not a single unified kingdom, but rather a collection of city-states, each with its own government and patron deity. These city-states, such as Uruk, Nippur, and Lagash, competed for power and resources, but also shared cultural and technological advancements. The Sumerians established an intricate system of agriculture, where they used irrigation to control the flow of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, ensuring their crops flourished. This innovation in agriculture supported the growth of large, densely populated cities, which became hubs for trade, religion, and culture. One of the most remarkable aspects of Sumerian civilization was its religion. The Sumerians believed in a vast pantheon of gods, each responsible for different aspects of nature and society. At the center of their religious life were the ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids built to honor the gods. These temples were the focal points of Sumerian cities, and the priests who served there held considerable power. Among the most prominent gods were Anu, the god of the sky, Enlil, the god of air and storms, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. Each city-state had its own chief god, and the king, considered a divine representative on earth, ruled in the name of that god. Sumerian kings were seen as intermediaries between the gods and the people,
and their authority was believed to be divinely sanctioned. One of the most enduring legacies of Sumerian civilization is the Epic of Gilgamesh, an epic poem that tells the story of a king's search for immortality. Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, was 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Though he was a mighty ruler, his people found him oppressive, and the gods created Enkidu, a wild man, to challenge him. Enkidu and Gilgamesh became fast friends, and together they undertook dangerous quests, including the slaying of the monstrous Humbaba and the killing of the Bull of Heaven. Their actions angered the gods, leading to the death of Enkidu. Grieving for his friend, Gilgamesh set out on a quest to find the secret of eternal life, only to learn that immortality is a gift reserved for the gods. In the end, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, accepting his mortality and leaving behind a legacy that would live on for centuries. The story of Gilgamesh is not only an exploration of the theme of friendship, but also an early meditation on the inevitability of death and the search for meaning in life. Alongside religious beliefs and literature, the Sumerians were pioneers in mathematics and astronomy. They devised a system of counting based on the number 60, which remains in use today in the division of time and angles. Their understanding of the heavens was advanced for their time, and they created a lunar calendar that helped them predict the cycles of the moon and the seasons. Sumerian priests were also astronomers, using the positions of the stars to forecast events and offer guidance to rulers. This astronomical knowledge laid the groundwork for future civilizations, such as the Babylonians and the Greeks. The Sumerians were also innovators in the field of law. The Code of Ur-Nammu, which predates the more famous Code of Hammurabi, is one of the earliest known written legal codes. The code, inscribed on a stone tablet, outlined the rights of citizens and the responsibilities of rulers, setting standards for justice and punishment. The Sumerians also developed a complex system of government. Kings ruled over their city-states, but they were not absolute rulers. The king's authority was constrained by a council of elders and priests who helped to ensure that justice was served and that the god's will was upheld. The Sumerians' advanced knowledge of agriculture, law, and government was complemented by their remarkable achievements in engineering and architecture. They constructed impressive buildings, including massive temples and palaces, and were among the first to use the arch in construction. Their ziggurats were not only religious centers, but also symbols of the power and wealth of the city-state. The Sumerians' knowledge of materials, such as mud brick and bitumen, allowed them to build durable structures that have withstood the test of time. Another key feature of Sumerian civilization was trade. The Sumerians engaged in long-distance trade, exchanging goods such as grain, textiles, and pottery for valuable resources like timber, precious metals, and gemstones. They established trade routes that connected them to other ancient civilizations, including the Indus Valley, Egypt, and Anatolia. This trade helped to spread Sumerian culture and innovations to other parts of the ancient world. The Sumerians were also skilled artisans, producing fine jewelry, pottery, and textiles. Their artwork, often featuring intricate designs and depictions of gods and kings, was highly prized and sought after by other cultures. As their civilization flourished, the Sumerians faced external challenges from neighboring peoples. The Akkadians, led by Sargon of Akkad, conquered the Sumerian city-states around 2300 BCE, creating the first empire in history. Although the Akkadians absorbed much of Sumerian culture and governance, the Sumerians' influence remained strong. They continued to shape the culture of Mesopotamia, particularly through their religious beliefs, writing, and legal codes. Despite their lasting influence, the Sumerians eventually began to decline due to internal conflict, invasions by outside forces, and environmental challenges. The salinization of the soil, caused by over-irrigation made farming less productive, leading to food shortages and economic instability. The Sumerian city-states were eventually absorbed into the empires of the Babylonians, Assyrians, and Persians. However, the Sumerians' cultural legacy lived on, influencing subsequent civilizations and laying the groundwork for the development of Western civilization. The story of the first humans, according to Sumerian mythology, begins with the gods creating humanity to serve them. In the myth of Enki and Ninhursag, the god Enki creates the first humans by mixing clay with the blood of a slain god. These early humans were tasked with performing labor for the gods, maintaining the balance of nature and ensuring the prosperity of the land. The Sumerians believed that their kings were the direct descendants of the gods, and that the king's role was to serve as a bridge between the divine and human realms. The myth of the creation of humans reflects the Sumerians' belief in the gods' control over all aspects of life, and their view that humans were created for the gods' benefit. Despite their subservient role, humans were also believed to possess free will, and their actions could influence the fate of the world. Sumerian creation myths also reflect a belief in the cyclical nature of life and death. In the myth of the descent of Inanna, the goddess of love and war, Inanna travels to the underworld to visit her sister, Erishkigal, the queen of the dead. During her journey, Inanna is stripped of her divine attributes and is imprisoned in the underworld. After a series of trials, Inanna is resurrected, symbolizing the cycle of death and rebirth. This myth, along with others, underscores the Sumerians' belief in the continuity of life, death, and resurrection. The Sumerians' views on the afterlife were also shaped by their religion. While they believed in an existence after death, they did not envision a paradise or a hell. Instead, the dead were believed to journey to the underworld, where they would live in shadow and dust. The Sumerians' concept of the afterlife was more focused on maintaining the balance between life and death and ensuring that the gods' will was followed. The role of kings and priests in this process was crucial, as they were responsible for performing rituals and making offerings to the gods in order to secure favor for the living and the dead alike. The Sumerian civilization, though it eventually declined, remains one of the most significant in human history. Its contributions to writing, law, religion, and science helped shape the course of future civilizations, and its legacy continues to influence modern society. From the invention of writing to the development of the first legal codes and the exploration of the human condition in literature, the Sumerians left an indelible mark on the world.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest known in human history, emerged in the southern part of Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE. Known for its remarkable advancements in writing, governance, and culture, Sumer is often called the cradle of civilization. The Sumerians developed cuneiform, the world's first known writing system, characterized by wedge-shaped marks etched onto clay tablets. These marks allowed for record-keeping and the codification of laws, rituals, and stories, making the Sumerians pioneers in human communication. The civilization itself was not a unified empire, but a collection of independent city-states, such as Ur, Uruk, Lagash, and Nippur. Each city-state was governed by its king, considered a divine representative of the gods. Religion played a central role in Sumerian life, with gods and goddesses overseeing everything from agriculture to warfare. The Sumerians believed that the gods controlled every aspect of existence, and it was the king's duty to ensure their will was carried out. The most prominent deities in the Sumerian pantheon included Anu, the sky god, Enlil, the god of air and storms, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. Temples dedicated to these gods were the largest and most important buildings in Sumerian cities, and the priests who tended them held immense power. They often dictated the political decisions of the kings, further cementing the divine role of leadership.
One of the most enduring legacies of the Sumerians is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a story that blends history with myth to explore themes of friendship, death, and immortality. Gilgamesh, the semi-divine king of Uruk, is introduced as a powerful but flawed ruler. His people suffer under his oppressive rule, and the gods create Enkidu, a wild man, to balance Gilgamesh's strength. The two eventually become friends, embarking on dangerous quests such as killing the monster Humbaba and slaying the bull of heaven. Their actions provoke the gods, and Enkidu is sentenced to death. Gilgamesh, devastated by the loss of his friend, begins a quest for immortality. His journey takes him to the distant sage Utnapishtim, who survived a great flood and was granted eternal life by the gods. However, Gilgamesh learns that immortality is beyond human reach, and the secret to a meaningful life lies in accepting death and living a life of legacy. This profound story addresses the human desire for immortality and the inevitability of mortality, themes that continue to resonate across cultures. Alongside their literary achievements, the Sumerians made significant advances in mathematics and science. They developed a sexagesimal system based on the number 60, which is still used today in the division of time and angles. Their knowledge of astronomy was sophisticated as they used the stars to develop a lunar calendar that helped with agricultural planning and religious observances. Sumerian astronomers could predict celestial events, and their observations of the night sky laid the groundwork for future astronomical studies in Babylon and Greece. The Sumerians also devised a system of law and governance that had a profound impact on future civilizations. The Code of Ur-Nammu, one of the earliest known legal codes, laid out laws on property rights, family matters, and crime. This code predates the famous Code of Hammurabi by centuries and is an early example of the Sumerians' ability to create structured, organized societies. Kings were responsible for enforcing the laws, and their rule was seen as divinely ordained. In addition to their innovations in governance and law, the Sumerians were exceptional engineers. They built cities with advanced infrastructure, including irrigation systems, roads, and defensive walls. They developed the ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid-like structure that served as a religious center and symbol of the city's power. The ziggurats were constructed from mud bricks and were often decorated with intricate carvings and statues of gods. Sumerian cities also had marketplaces where goods such as grain, textiles, and pottery were traded. Their artisans were skilled in making jewelry, tools, and pottery, often using metals like copper and bronze. Their trade networks extended as far as the Indus Valley and Egypt, facilitating the exchange of goods and ideas. The Sumerians were also pioneers in agriculture, utilizing the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to produce a surplus of food. They developed complex irrigation systems to manage the river's annual floods and ensure crops could be grown year-round. This agricultural surplus supported the growth of large urban centers and allowed for the specialization of labor. Farmers, merchants, artisans, and priests each played an important role in Sumerian society, with each class contributing to the prosperity of the city-state. Despite the wealth and technological advancements, Sumerian society was stratified. At the top were the king and priests, who were closely tied to the divine order and had the power to command resources and labor. Below them were the merchants, craftsmen, and farmers, who formed the backbone of the economy. At the bottom of the social hierarchy were the slaves, often prisoners of war or individuals who had fallen into debt. The Sumerians had a complex understanding of human life and death. They believed that the soul entered the body at birth and left it at death, but the afterlife was seen as a bleak and shadowy existence. The dead were believed to dwell in the underworld, a place of darkness and dust, where they lived a life devoid of joy or vitality. Despite this grim outlook on the afterlife, the Sumerians performed elaborate burial rites, often including offerings of food, drink, and personal items, to ensure that the deceased would be provided for in the afterlife. They believed that through these rituals they could ensure the gods' favor and maintain the harmony of the natural world. The Sumerian civilization eventually began to decline around 2000 BCE. Internal strife, invasions from outside forces, and environmental challenges such as the salinization of the soil weakened the foundation of Sumerian society. The Akkadians, led by Sargon of Akkad, conquered Sumer and established the first known empire in history. Although the Akkadians adopted many aspects of Sumerian culture, the decline of the Sumerian city-states marked the end of their dominance in the region. However, Sumerian influence persisted as their innovations in writing, law, and religion continued to shape the development of later civilizations, including the Babylonians and Assyrians. The Sumerians' contributions to human culture and knowledge have had a lasting impact on the world. The invention of writing, the development of the first legal codes, and the creation of monumental architecture all served as foundations for future societies. The Sumerians' knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and agriculture laid the groundwork for future ancient cultures in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and beyond. Their myths and literature, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, remain some of the earliest and most significant works of literature, and their legacy continues to resonate today. The story of the first humans in Sumerian mythology reflects the culture's deep connection to the divine and their understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. According to the Sumerian creation myths, humans were created by the gods from clay to serve their needs. In the myth of Enki and Ninhursag, the god Enki creates the first humans by mixing clay with the blood of a slain god. This act of creation reflects the Sumerians' belief that humans were divinely ordained to serve the gods and maintain the balance of nature. The creation of humans was not seen as an arbitrary event, but part of a larger cosmic order. In this worldview, the relationship between humans and gods was central to the functioning of the universe. The Sumerians' myths also offered explanations for natural phenomena and human experiences. The myth of Inanna's descent to the underworld, for example, explained the seasonal cycles of death and rebirth. Inanna, the goddess of love and war, descends to the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal, but is stripped of her divine powers and imprisoned. After undergoing a series of trials, Inanna is resurrected, symbolizing the cyclical nature of life and death. The Sumerians believed that life was a constant cycle of birth, death, and renewal, a concept that underpinned their religious practices and worldview. Despite the eventual decline of their civilization, the Sumerians' contributions to human culture and knowledge continue to shape the modern world. From their invention of writing and the codification of laws to their groundbreaking achievements in astronomy and agriculture, the Sumerians laid the foundations for many of the institutions and ideas that define modern society. Their myths, too, continue to influence literature and culture, reminding us of the enduring power of storytelling and the quest for meaning in an ever-changing world.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential cultures in human history, began around 4000 BCE in the southern region of Mesopotamia in present-day Iraq. This society, known for its sophisticated urban planning, technological advancements, and deep religious beliefs, flourished in the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which provided the necessary resources for the growth of cities and agriculture. The Sumerians are often credited with the invention of the first form of writing, known as cuneiform, which was used to record laws, trade transactions, and stories. This revolutionary writing system involved inscribing wedge-shaped marks on clay tablets and paved the way for future civilizations to develop written records. The Sumerians also introduced many other innovations, such as the wheel, the plow, and the concept of dividing the day into 24 hours, influencing societies long after their decline. At the heart of Sumerian society were its city-states, such as Uruk, Lagash, and Nippur, each governed by its own king who was believed to be divinely chosen. These kings were not only political leaders, but also religious figures who acted as intermediaries between the gods and the people.
The Sumerians worshipped a multitude of gods and goddesses, each associated with different aspects of life, from agriculture and fertility to war and the heavens. At the center of their religious life were the ziggurats, monumental temple towers dedicated to the gods. These ziggurats served as both religious and political centers, symbolizing the power of the city-state and the divine mandate of its rulers. The Sumerians believed that their kings were responsible for ensuring the prosperity of their city-state by appeasing the gods and maintaining order in the natural world. One of the most famous works of literature to emerge from Sumerian culture is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a profound story that explores the themes of friendship, mortality, and the search for immortality. Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, is portrayed as a powerful yet flawed ruler who abuses his power and oppresses his people. To balance his strength, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives in the wilderness, and the two become close friends. Their adventures, which include slaying the monster Humbaba and killing the bull of heaven sent by the goddess Ishtar, anger the gods and result in Enkidu's death. Devastated by the loss of his companion, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find the secret of eternal life. He travels to the far corners of the world and meets Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood and was granted immortality by the gods. However, Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh that immortality is reserved for the gods and that humans must accept their mortality. This realization leads Gilgamesh to return to Uruk, where he accepts his fate and recognizes that his legacy, built through his deeds and the city he helped build, will live on long after his death. The story of Gilgamesh is one of the oldest surviving literary works and continues to be a powerful meditation on the human condition, particularly our fear of death and our desire for meaning in life. Alongside their literary achievements, the Sumerians made remarkable advancements in science, mathematics, and engineering. Their understanding of mathematics was based on the number 60, a system that is still used today in the measurement of time and angles. The Sumerians were skilled astronomers who studied the stars and developed a lunar calendar that helped guide agricultural practices and religious festivals. Their knowledge of the heavens enabled them to predict eclipses and other celestial events, which they saw as signs from the gods. The Sumerians also built complex irrigation systems to control the flow of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, ensuring that their crops flourished. This allowed them to support large urban populations and created the foundation for the development of trade and industry. The Sumerians were among the first to establish systems of writing and record-keeping, which were essential for the development of their economy and legal systems. The Code of Ur-Nammu, one of the earliest known legal codes, dates back to the 21st century BCE and provides insight into Sumerian society's approach to justice. The code, which predates the more famous Code of Hammurabi, outlined laws related to property rights, marriage, and the punishment of crimes. The Sumerians were also skilled in metallurgy and were among the first to work with bronze, using it to create weapons, tools, and decorative items. These technological advancements laid the foundation for future civilizations and contributed to the growth of trade networks that stretched across the ancient Near East. The Sumerians also made significant contributions to architecture, with their most iconic structures being the ziggurats. These massive stepped pyramids were built to honor the gods and served as centers of religious and political activity. The ziggurats were constructed using mud bricks, and some were as tall as 6 stories, making them the tallest structures of their time. The construction of these monumental buildings required advanced engineering techniques and a large labor force, and their sheer size and grandeur symbolized the power and influence of the city-state. The Sumerians' influence extended far beyond their time. As the Sumerian civilization declined around 2000 BCE, its cultural and technological achievements were adopted and further developed by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon of Akkad, united the region under a single ruler and spread Sumerian culture throughout Mesopotamia. The Akkadians adopted the cuneiform script and many of Sumerian religious beliefs and practices.
Sumerian writing system, religious practices, and legal codes, ensuring that Sumerian innovations would continue to shape the future of the ancient Near East. Despite the decline of the Sumerians as a distinct political entity, their influence can be seen in the later cultures that emerged in Mesopotamia. The Babylonians, for example, inherited many aspects of Sumerian law, including the idea of a written code of justice, which was expanded upon in the famous Code of Hammurabi. Similarly, the Assyrians adopted Sumerian religious practices and architectural styles, incorporating them into their own imperial culture. Sumerian myths and legends also found their way into the literature of later civilizations. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance, was passed down to the Babylonians, who adapted the story into their own literary tradition. The themes of the epic, particularly the quest for immortality and the friendship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, resonated with later cultures and continue to be explored in literature today. The Sumerians also played a significant role in the development of the ancient world's first trade networks. Their cities were bustling centers of commerce, where goods such as grain, textiles, and pottery were traded with neighboring regions. The Sumerians established trading relationships with peoples as far away as the Indus Valley and Egypt, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. This trade helped to spread Sumerian culture and innovations throughout the ancient world, influencing the development of other civilizations. The Sumerians also had a complex social hierarchy, with the king and priests at the top, followed by merchants, artisans, and farmers. The king, who was seen as the representative of the gods on earth, held absolute power, though he was expected to rule justly and maintain harmony within society. The priests, who oversaw religious rituals and temple activities, were also highly influential and often served as advisors to the king. Merchants and artisans were essential to the economy, producing goods that were traded both locally and internationally. At the bottom of the social ladder were the farmers, who provided the food that sustained the population, and the slaves, who were often prisoners of war or debtors. The Sumerians had a deeply religious view of the world, believing that the gods controlled every aspect of life, from the weather and agriculture to birth and death. The gods were seen as powerful and capricious, and the Sumerians believed that it was the duty of the king and priests to maintain their favor through rituals and offerings. Despite the bleak view of the afterlife, where the dead were believed to dwell in a dark and dusty underworld, the Sumerians sought to gain favor with the gods and ensure their well-being in the next life. They believed that proper burial rituals and offerings were essential for the deceased to have a safe journey to the afterlife. The legacy of the Sumerian civilization is vast and enduring. Their innovations in writing, law, architecture, and science have had a lasting impact on the world. The Sumerians laid the groundwork for many of the institutions and ideas that would define future civilizations, and their cultural achievements continue to be studied and admired today. From the creation of the first written records to the development of complex social, political, and economic systems, the Sumerians shaped the course of human history in ways that are still felt to this day. The Sumerian civilization, regarded as one of the world's oldest, emerged in the southern part of Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE, a region situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which provided fertile soil for agriculture. The Sumerians are credited with many significant inventions, including the creation of cuneiform, the earliest known form of writing, which utilized wedge-shaped marks inscribed on clay tablets. This writing system facilitated the recording of everything from agricultural transactions to religious texts and laws, making it one of the most crucial innovations of ancient societies. Cuneiform writing enabled the Sumerians to document their history, culture, and beliefs, laying the foundation for future civilizations. The Sumerians were not a single unified entity, but rather a collection of independent city-states such as Uruk, Lagash, and Nippur. Each city-state was governed by a king who was believed to be chosen by the gods, ruling in their name and ensuring their will was followed. The king's authority was not only political but also religious, and he was seen as the intermediary between the gods and the people. This system led to a close integration of religion and politics in Sumerian society, with religious observance playing a central role in daily life. The Sumerians worshipped a multitude of gods, each associated with different elements of nature and society, such as Anu, the god of the sky, Enlil, the god of air and storms, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. These deities were believed to control every aspect of existence, from the fertility of the land to the fate of individuals, and their power was reflected in the grandeur of the ziggurats, the massive stepped pyramids built to honor them. The ziggurats were the focal points of Sumerian cities, with priests overseeing the religious ceremonies that took place there. These priests were among the most powerful individuals in Sumerian society, often holding political influence as well. The Sumerian religion was centered on the belief that the gods had created humanity to serve them. According to Sumerian mythology, humans were fashioned from clay by the gods to perform the work that the gods did not want to do themselves. The creation of humans was viewed as a divine act, and the relationship between humans and gods was integral to the functioning of the world. This relationship was further exemplified in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest and most famous pieces of literature to come from ancient Mesopotamia. The epic tells the story of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who is described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Despite his extraordinary strength and wisdom, Gilgamesh is depicted as a flawed ruler who abuses his power, leading to unrest among his people. To correct this, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to be his equal and challenge his authority. Enkidu is eventually introduced to civilization and becomes a close companion to Gilgamesh. The two embark on a series of heroic adventures, including the defeat of the monster Humbaba, guardian of the cedar forest, and the killing of the bull of heaven sent by the goddess Ishtar. Their actions, however, anger the gods, and as punishment, Enkidu is condemned to death. Gilgamesh, devastated by the loss of his friend, sets out on a quest for immortality. He travels to the farthest reaches of the world, seeking the wisdom of Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood and was granted eternal life by the gods. However, Utnapishtim reveals to Gilgamesh that immortality is reserved for the gods, and no human can escape death. After learning this hard truth, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, where he reflects on the nature of life and death. He comes to accept that immortality is an illusion, and the legacy of a person's actions in life is what truly endures. The story of Gilgamesh is not only a tale of friendship and adventure, but also a profound exploration of mortality and the quest for meaning in life. In addition to their contributions to literature, the Sumerians made significant strides in various fields of science and technology. They developed an advanced system of mathematics based on the number 60, which is still used today to measure time and angles. The Sumerians were also skilled astronomers who studied the stars and planets, and their observations formed the basis of a lunar calendar. This calendar was essential for agricultural planning, helping the Sumerians determine the best times for planting and harvesting crops. Their understanding of the heavens also allowed them to predict celestial events, such as eclipses, which were believed to be omens from the gods. The Sumerians' expertise in engineering and architecture is evident in the ziggurats, which were not only religious centers, but also symbols of the power of the city-state. The construction of these massive stepped pyramids required advanced knowledge of materials and engineering techniques.
The Sumerians also built impressive city walls, roads, and canals, which helped regulate the flow of water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, allowing them to farm more efficiently. These technological advancements contributed to the growth of Sumerian cities, which became thriving centers of trade and commerce. The Sumerians were among the first to develop a system of written law, with the Code of Ur-Nammu being one of the earliest known legal texts. The code established laws related to property, marriage, and crime, and it emphasized the importance of justice and fairness. The Sumerians' legal system was based on the belief that the king was the representative of the gods on earth, and it was his duty to enforce the laws in a way that ensured the well-being of his people. The Sumerians also made great strides in the fields of agriculture and trade. They developed complex irrigation systems to control the flow of water and improve crop yields, allowing them to support large populations. The surplus crops were traded with neighboring regions, facilitating the exchange of goods and ideas. The Sumerians traded goods such as grain, textiles, and pottery for luxury items such as lapis lazuli, copper, and tin, which were used to make jewelry and weapons. Trade routes connected Sumer to distant regions, including the Indus Valley, Egypt, and Anatolia, spreading Sumerian culture and innovations across the ancient world. The Sumerians were also skilled in the arts, creating intricate jewelry, pottery, and sculptures. Their artwork often depicted scenes of daily life, as well as images of gods and kings, and their craftsmanship was highly prized by neighboring cultures. Despite their achievements, the Sumerian civilization began to decline around 2000 BCE. Several factors contributed to this decline, including internal conflict, invasions by neighboring peoples, and environmental challenges such as the salinization of the soil caused by over-irrigation. The Akkadians, led by Sargon of Akkad, conquered the Sumerian city-states and established the first known empire in history. The Akkadians adopted many aspects of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, religion, and legal codes, ensuring that Sumerian innovations continued to shape the development of future civilizations. Although the Sumerians themselves eventually faded from the political scene, their legacy has endured through the centuries. The Sumerians' contributions to writing, law, mathematics, and architecture have had a lasting impact on the world. Their innovations paved the way for the rise of future civilizations, and their cultural achievements continue to be studied and admired by historians and scholars. The Sumerians' understanding of the natural world, their advanced engineering and architectural feats, and their contributions to literature and law remain a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of one of the world's first great civilizations. Their story is not just a chronicle of the past, but a reminder of the enduring legacy of human achievement and the ways in which ancient societies continue to shape our world today.
The Sumerian civilization, regarded as one of the oldest and most influential cultures in human history, emerged around 4000 BCE in the southern part of Mesopotamia, now modern-day Iraq. The fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers provided an ideal environment for the development of advanced societies, as the river's annual floods enriched the soil, allowing for successful agriculture. The Sumerians are credited with many pioneering achievements, most notably the invention of writing. The development of cuneiform writing was a significant milestone, as it allowed for the documentation of laws, religious practices, and literature. The cuneiform script, formed from wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets, became the foundation for written communication in the ancient world. Alongside their literary advances, the Sumerians created the first legal codes, most notably the Code of Ur-Nammu, which outlined rules for property, marriage, and crime, thus establishing a basis for governance and justice in their society. The Sumerian civilization was not a single empire, but rather a collection of independent city-states, each with its own ruler and patron deity. Among the most prominent city-states were Ur, Uruk, Lagash, and Nippur.
These cities were often in competition with one another, but they shared a common culture, including language, religion, and innovations in governance. The Sumerians' complex religious life was centered around the worship of a vast pantheon of gods, each responsible for different aspects of nature and human existence. The chief deities included Anu, the god of the sky, Enlil, the god of air and storms, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. Ziggurats, towering temple structures dedicated to these gods, were built in the heart of each city, symbolizing the power of both the gods and the city-state's rulers. The kings, who were considered divine representatives on earth, were responsible for maintaining harmony between the gods and the people. The relationship between humans and gods was central to Sumerian beliefs, with the people perceiving their lives as intricately intertwined with the whims of the gods. One of the most significant cultural legacies of the Sumerians is the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature. The story follows Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who is described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Despite his extraordinary strength and wisdom, Gilgamesh is portrayed as a flawed ruler, burdened by arrogance and cruelty toward his people. To temper his excesses, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who initially lives in harmony with nature. When Enkidu encounters Gilgamesh, the two become close friends and embark on several heroic adventures. Their feats include slaying Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, and killing the bull of heaven sent by the goddess Ishtar. However, their actions anger the gods, leading to Enkidu's untimely death. Devastated by the loss of his friend, Gilgamesh sets out on a quest to find the secret to eternal life, hoping to avoid the fate of mortality that has claimed Enkidu. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a wise figure who survived a great flood and was granted immortality by the gods. However, Utnapishtim reveals that immortality is beyond the reach of humans, and that death is an inevitable part of life. Gilgamesh, disheartened but wiser, returns to Uruk, where he recognizes that his legacy, defined by the city he built and the deeds he performed, is the truest form of immortality. This realization leads Gilgamesh to accept his mortality and embrace the idea that the lives of individuals are ultimately shaped by their actions and the memories they leave behind. The story of Gilgamesh, with its exploration of the themes of friendship, death, and the human desire for immortality, has resonated through the centuries and remains a foundational text in world literature. The Sumerians' achievements extended beyond literature into the realms of science, mathematics, and engineering. Their sexagesimal number system, based on the number 60, laid the groundwork for many of the systems we use today, including the division of time into hours, minutes, and seconds. Their advanced knowledge of mathematics was applied in astronomy, where they developed a lunar calendar to track the phases of the moon and predict seasonal changes. The Sumerians' understanding of the heavens allowed them to calculate celestial events such as eclipses, which were interpreted as omens from the gods. In addition to their work in mathematics and astronomy, the Sumerians were skilled engineers and architects. They constructed complex irrigation systems to manage the flow of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, ensuring that their crops were well watered and their cities could support large populations. They also built impressive city walls, temples, and ziggurats, demonstrating their engineering prowess. These ziggurats, often reaching up to 6 stories, were not only religious centers, but also symbols of the city's power and the divine authority of its rulers. The kings, who were considered divine representatives on earth, were responsible for maintaining harmony between the gods and the people. The relationship between humans and gods was central to Sumerian beliefs, with the people perceiving their lives as intricately intertwined with the whims of the gods. One of the most significant cultural legacies of the Sumerians is the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature. The story follows Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who is described as two-thirds divine and one-third human. Despite his extraordinary strength and wisdom, Gilgamesh is portrayed as a flawed ruler, burdened by arrogance and cruelty toward his people. To temper his excesses, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who initially lives in harmony with nature. When Enkidu encounters Gilgamesh, the two become close friends and embark on several heroic adventures. Their feats include slaying Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest, and killing the bull of heaven sent by the goddess Ishtar. However, their actions anger the gods, leading to Enkidu's untimely death. Devastated by the loss of his friend, Gilgamesh sets out on a quest to find the secret to eternal life, hoping to avoid the fate of mortality that has claimed Enkidu. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a wise figure who survived a great flood and was granted immortality by the gods. However, Utnapishtim reveals that immortality is beyond the reach of humans, and that death is an inevitable part of life. Gilgamesh, disheartened but wiser, returns to Uruk, where he recognizes that his legacy, defined by the city he built and the deeds he performed, is the truest form of immortality. This realization leads Gilgamesh to accept his mortality and embrace the idea that the lives of individuals are ultimately shaped by their actions and the memories they leave behind. The story of Gilgamesh, with its exploration of the themes of friendship, death, and the human desire for immortality, has resonated through the centuries and remains a foundational text in world literature. The Sumerians' achievements extended beyond literature into the realms of science, mathematics, and engineering. Their sexagesimal number system, based on the number 60, laid the groundwork for many of the systems we use today, including the division of time into hours, minutes, and seconds. Their advanced knowledge of mathematics was applied in astronomy, where they developed a lunar calendar to track the phases of the moon and predict seasonal changes. The Sumerians' understanding of the heavens allowed them to calculate celestial events such as eclipses, which were interpreted as omens from the gods. In addition to their work in mathematics and astronomy, the Sumerians were skilled engineers and architects. They constructed complex irrigation systems to manage the flow of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, ensuring that their crops were well watered and their cities could support large populations. They also built impressive city walls, temples, and ziggurats, demonstrating their engineering prowess. These ziggurats, often reaching up to 6 stories, were not only religious centers, but also symbols of the city's power and the divine authority of its rulers. The kings, who were considered divine representatives on earth, were responsible for maintaining harmony between the gods and the people. The relationship between humans and gods was central to Sumerian beliefs, with the people perceiving their lives as intricately intertwined with the whims of the gods. One of the most significant cultural legacies of the Sumerians is the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature. The story follows Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who is described as two-thirds divine and one-third human. Despite his extraordinary strength and wisdom, Gilgamesh is portrayed as a flawed ruler, burdened by arrogance and cruelty toward his people. To temper his excesses, the gods create
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential in human history, arose around 4000 BCE in the southern part of Mesopotamia, a region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers that offered fertile soil due to annual flooding. This environment enabled the development of agriculture, leading to the rise of some of the world's first cities. The Sumerians were pioneers in many areas, from writing to governance and law.
They invented cuneiform, one of the earliest writing systems, using wedge-shaped marks made on clay tablets. This writing system was crucial for the administration of the city-states and allowed for the recording of important events, laws, and religious texts. It also facilitated the creation of literature, most notably the Epic of Gilgamesh, a rich and complex narrative that remains one of the most significant early works of literature. The Sumerians' ability to create written records was an important achievement, allowing them to document everything from agricultural data to religious rituals and myths. Their religious beliefs were deeply intertwined with their daily lives, as they believed their kings were divine representatives of the gods. Each Sumerian city-state had its own patron deity, and the king was seen as their earthly representative, tasked with maintaining the favor of the gods and ensuring prosperity. This belief in divine kingship led to the construction of monumental temples, the ziggurats, which symbolized both the gods' power and the city's strength. These towering structures, often adorned with statues and carvings, served as centers for religious ceremonies, where priests performed rituals to ensure the city's well-being. The Sumerian gods were believed to control all aspects of the natural world and human existence, from the fertility of the land to the fate of individuals. The most powerful of these deities were Anu, the god of the sky, Enlil, the god of air and storms, and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. The relationship between humanity and the gods was central to Sumerian life, with the people performing sacrifices, offerings, and prayers to secure divine favor. One of the most well-known works to emerge from Sumerian culture is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a long poem that tells the story of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. Gilgamesh is depicted as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, possessing immense strength, wisdom, and beauty. However, he is also portrayed as a flawed ruler who is selfish, oppressive, and indifferent to the suffering of his people. The people of Uruk, suffering under his harsh rule, pray to the gods for relief. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives in harmony with nature, to challenge Gilgamesh's power. Enkidu is initially introduced to the concept of civilization through a woman named Shamhat, who teaches him the ways of society. Enkidu becomes more human, losing his wildness and gaining a sense of morality. Eventually, he confronts Gilgamesh, and the two men engage in a fierce struggle, which ends in a draw. The two men then become close friends, and together they embark on a series of heroic quests. Their most famous adventure is the journey to the cedar forest to defeat Humbaba, the terrifying guardian of the forest. This victory angers the gods, and their wrath leads to the killing of the bull of heaven, which was sent by the goddess Ishtar as punishment. In retaliation, the gods decree that Enkidu must die. Enkidu's death devastates Gilgamesh, who is consumed by grief and despair. This loss forces Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality, and he sets out on a quest to find the secret of eternal life. His journey takes him to Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood and was granted immortality by the gods. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh that immortality is a divine gift and that no human can escape death. The realization that he will never achieve eternal life causes Gilgamesh to return to Uruk, where he comes to terms with his mortality. He recognizes that although he cannot live forever, his legacy will endure through the great city he built and the deeds he accomplished during his life. The Epic of Gilgamesh thus explores the complex themes of mortality, friendship, and the search for meaning in life. The story reflects the human desire for immortality and the fear of death, but also the understanding that legacy and the impact one leaves on the world are what ultimately matter. In addition to its cultural and intellectual achievements, the Sumerian civilization made tremendous strides in other fields, such as mathematics, astronomy, and law. The Sumerians developed a sexagesimal numeral system, which is based on the number 60. This system is still used today in the division of time, with 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. The Sumerians also made advances in astronomy, developing a lunar calendar based on the phases of the moon. Their understanding of celestial bodies allowed them to track the cycles of the planets and predict events such as eclipses. The Sumerians believed that the stars and planets were the gods' instruments and used their observations to guide agricultural activities and religious practices. The Sumerians were also skilled engineers and architects. Their ability to control the flow of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers through irrigation systems allowed them to farm year-round, producing a surplus of crops and supporting large urban populations. They constructed impressive cities with ziggurats, palaces, and defensive walls, showcasing their architectural expertise. The ziggurats, in particular, were architectural marvels, often rising to 6 or 7 stories high and constructed with mud bricks. The Sumerians also invented the wheel, which revolutionized transportation and trade. Their trade networks stretched as far as the Indus Valley and Egypt, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultural practices. The Sumerians' contributions to mathematics, law, and governance were equally groundbreaking. The Code of Ur-Nammu, created in the 21st century BCE, is one of the earliest known legal codes and predated the more famous Code of Hammurabi. The code, which was inscribed on clay tablets, outlined laws related to marriage, property, and punishment for crimes, establishing a system of justice that was fundamental to Sumerian society. Sumerian kings were seen as divinely ordained rulers, and their duty was to ensure that laws were upheld and that the gods' will was followed. In addition to the development of laws, the Sumerians also contributed to the fields of literature and education. Sumerian schools were established to train scribes who were responsible for writing down official records, business transactions, and religious texts. These schools played a vital role in maintaining the administrative systems of the city-states and helped to preserve Sumerian culture for future generations. The Sumerians were also skilled in the arts, creating pottery, jewelry, and sculptures that showcased their craftsmanship. Their art often depicted scenes from daily life, including farming, trade, and religious rituals, as well as gods and kings. Despite these many achievements, the Sumerian civilization began to decline around 2000 BCE due to internal strife, invasions by neighboring peoples, and environmental challenges. The Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon of Akkad, eventually conquered the Sumerian city-states, and Sumerian culture was absorbed into the larger Akkadian Empire. However, many elements of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, legal codes, and religious practices, were passed down to later civilizations, such as the Babylonians and Assyrians. The legacy of the Sumerian civilization lived on, influencing the development of law, governance, and culture in the ancient world. The Babylonians, for example, adopted Sumerian laws and literature, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, which became an important part of their own cultural heritage. In many ways, the Sumerians laid the foundation for the rise of future civilizations, and their contributions to human knowledge and culture continue to shape our understanding of the ancient world. The Sumerians' inventions in writing, mathematics, and architecture laid the groundwork for many of the technologies and institutions that followed, and their cultural achievements continue to resonate today. Their ability to build complex societies, govern effectively, and create lasting works of art and literature remains a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of one of humanity's earliest civilizations. In addition to their cultural and intellectual achievements, the Sumerians also had a profound impact on later civilizations. Their polytheistic religion, with its vast pantheon of gods and goddesses, influenced the religious practices of the Babylonians, Assyrians, and other Mesopotamian cultures. The Sumerians' understanding of the afterlife, with its grim depiction of the underworld, also shaped the views of the afterlife in later Mesopotamian societies. Their emphasis on the king's divine role as mediator between the gods and the people also influenced the political systems of future civilizations, particularly in Egypt and the Near East. Although the Sumerian civilization eventually faded from
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential in history, emerged around 4000 BCE in the southern region of Mesopotamia, now modern-day Iraq. This land, positioned between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, offered fertile soil, which facilitated the growth of agriculture. Agriculture allowed the Sumerians to establish one of the first urban societies in history. The Sumerians made numerous remarkable contributions to human civilization, the most significant of which was the invention of writing. Cuneiform, the writing system they developed, was initially created for the purpose of recording commercial transactions, but it evolved into a tool for documenting laws, religious practices, historical events, and eventually literature. This innovation in writing not only preserved their culture, but also laid the foundation for future civilizations. Alongside their development of writing, the Sumerians also made advancements in mathematics, law, astronomy, and architecture. Their base 60 numeral system is still used today in measuring time, with 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. The Sumerians also created a lunar calendar, which was essential for agriculture, helping them predict the best times to plant and harvest crops. One of the greatest legacies of the Sumerians is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a story that has influenced countless cultures and writers throughout history. The epic centers on Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, who was described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Gilgamesh is powerful, wise, and revered, but he is also a flawed leader. He is known for his arrogance and disregard for the welfare of his people. His actions, which include abusing his power and taking advantage of his citizens, cause the people of Uruk to pray to the gods for relief. In response to their prayers, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives with animals. Enkidu is introduced to civilization through Shamhat, a temple prostitute, who teaches him the ways of human society. Once Enkidu becomes more human, he confronts Gilgamesh, and the two engage in a fierce battle. However, rather than continuing as adversaries, they become fast friends, united in their shared strength and adventures. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu undertake a series of heroic quests. The most significant of these is their journey to the cedar forest, where they fight and defeat Humbaba, the guardian of the forest, in an attempt to gain glory and favor from the gods. Their actions, however, anger the gods, particularly Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. In retaliation, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish them. The two heroes kill the bull, further enraging the gods. In response, the gods decree that Enkidu must die. Enkidu's death devastates Gilgamesh, and the loss of his beloved friend forces Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality. Consumed by grief and a fear of death, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find the secret to immortality, seeking out Utnapishtim, the immortal survivor of a great flood. Utnapishtim reveals that immortality is a gift given only to the gods, and no human can escape death. He tells Gilgamesh the story of the Great Flood, which mirrors the biblical story of Noah's Ark. Despite learning that immortality is not attainable for humans, Gilgamesh continues to search for meaning in life. After meeting Utnapishtim and failing in his quest for eternal life, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, wiser and more accepting of his fate. He understands that while death is inevitable, the legacy of one's deeds and the impact one has on the world can achieve a form of immortality. This realization allows him to return to his people and rule more wisely, focusing on the betterment of Uruk rather than seeking to defy fate. The Epic of Gilgamesh offers profound insights into the human condition, exploring themes of friendship, mortality, and the pursuit of meaning in life.
It is one of the earliest works of literature that tackles the existential questions that humans continue to grapple with today. In addition to their contributions to literature, the Sumerians also made groundbreaking advances in many areas of knowledge. They were among the first to develop sophisticated systems of government and law. The Code of Ur-Nammu, one of the earliest known legal codes, was established in the Sumerian city-state of Ur around 2100 BCE. The code, which predated the more famous Code of Hammurabi, was inscribed on tablets and outlined various laws related to property, marriage, and crime. The Sumerians believed that the king, as the representative of the gods on earth, was responsible for maintaining justice and ensuring that the laws were followed. In their legal system, there were punishments for those who broke the law, but there was also an emphasis on fairness and equality. Along with their legal innovations, the Sumerians were skilled engineers and architects. They built impressive cities with defensive walls, palaces, and temples, the most iconic of which were the ziggurats, towering step pyramids dedicated to the gods. These structures were constructed using mud bricks and were often several stories tall, symbolizing the power of both the gods and the city-state's ruler. Ziggurats were not only places of worship, but also centers for administrative functions, and were seen as the link between the heavens and the earth. In addition to their architectural feats, the Sumerians made advancements in agriculture, inventing the plow and establishing sophisticated irrigation systems. These innovations helped them manage the flow of water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, allowing them to farm year-round and support large urban populations. The Sumerians also traded extensively with other civilizations, exchanging goods such as grain, textiles, and pottery for precious metals, timber, and other raw materials. This trade network extended across Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and even as far as the Indus Valley and Egypt. The Sumerians were among the first to develop the wheel, which revolutionized transportation and trade. The wheel, along with other innovations such as the potter's wheel, enabled the Sumerians to create pottery more efficiently and to transport goods over longer distances. Despite these achievements, the Sumerian civilization began to decline around 2000 BCE. Internal conflicts, invasions from neighboring peoples, and environmental challenges such as soil salination due to over-irrigation contributed to the collapse of the Sumerian city-states. In the wake of their decline, the Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon of Akkad, conquered Sumer and established the first known empire in history. Sargon and his successors adopted many elements of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, religious beliefs, and legal codes, preserving Sumerian innovations for future generations. Although the Sumerians faded from political prominence, their cultural and intellectual achievements had a lasting impact on the civilizations that followed. The Babylonians, for example, inherited many aspects of Sumerian culture, including the development of written legal codes and the adaptation of Sumerian myths, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh. These myths were passed down and adapted by the Babylonians and later by the Assyrians, ensuring the survival of Sumerian culture in the ancient world. The Sumerians' legacy is also evident in their contributions to literature and education. The Sumerians established some of the first schools in history, where young boys were trained to become scribes. These schools taught students how to read and write cuneiform, a skill that was essential for working in the government or religious institutions. The Sumerians' emphasis on education helped to preserve their language and culture, ensuring that their ideas would continue to influence future civilizations. In conclusion, the Sumerian civilization, with its many achievements in writing, law, science, and architecture, laid the foundation for the development of future societies. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its exploration of friendship, mortality, and the search for meaning in life, remains one of the most important works of literature, offering timeless insights into the human experience. The Sumerians' innovations in governance, law, trade, and technology shaped the course of history, and their cultural legacy continues to influence modern societies. From their advanced writing system to their monumental architecture and their profound contributions to literature, the Sumerians established a cultural and intellectual foundation that has a lasting impact on the world.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the most influential early cultures, emerged around 4000 BCE in the region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a fertile area that became the cradle of urban development. This civilization gave rise to some of the world's first cities, such as Uruk, and pioneered many key elements of civilization, including writing, law, and governance. The Sumerians created the cuneiform script, one of the earliest forms of writing, which was initially used for record-keeping and later for religious texts and literature. Their writing system enabled them to record the many aspects of their complex society, from business transactions to mythologies and laws, preserving their culture for future generations. The most famous literary work to emerge from Sumer is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a long poem that tells the story of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. Gilgamesh is portrayed as two-thirds divine and one-third human, a powerful, intelligent, and charismatic ruler, but also one who is flawed, arrogant, ruthless, and disconnected from the needs of his people. His actions create unrest in the city, leading the citizens to appeal to the gods for relief. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh and curb his excesses. Enkidu is eventually introduced to civilization through Shamhat, a temple prostitute who teaches him human ways. He becomes more human, and when he meets Gilgamesh, the two initially clash, but their battle ends in a tie and they quickly become close friends. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on heroic quests. Their most significant adventure is the journey to the cedar forest, where they defeat Humbaba, the terrifying guardian of the forest. Afterward, the goddess Ishtar becomes infatuated with Gilgamesh, but when he rejects her advances, she sends the bull of heaven to punish him. Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull, further angering the gods. In retaliation, the gods decree that Enkidu must die. Enkidu's death devastates Gilgamesh, and he is overwhelmed with grief, realizing the fragility of life. Consumed by the fear of death and the desire to find immortality, Gilgamesh embarks on a journey to find Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood and was granted eternal life by the gods. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh the story of the flood, which bears striking similarities to the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. Despite Utnapishtim's revelations about the futility of immortality, Gilgamesh continues his quest, determined to find a way to escape death. Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as proof of his worthiness for immortality. Gilgamesh fails the test, and upon realizing that death is inevitable, he returns to Uruk, accepting his mortality. However, he also comes to a profound understanding that immortality is reserved for the gods and that the true value of life lies in the legacy one leaves behind. With this knowledge, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, where he resolves to rule wisely, ensuring that his city thrives in his absence. The story of Gilgamesh is not merely a tale of adventure and friendship, but also a profound reflection on the human condition. It deals with the themes of death, immortality, and the search for meaning in life, offering valuable insights into the human desire to leave a lasting impact and the acceptance of the inevitability of mortality. The Epic of Gilgamesh was likely composed by Sumerian priests and scribes during the early years of the 3rd millennium BCE, though the version we know today was preserved by the Babylonians, who added their own elements to the narrative. This epic is one of the oldest known pieces of literature and remains influential in the history of storytelling. The Sumerian civilization, which produced the Epic of Gilgamesh, also made significant contributions to the development of law, governance, science, and technology. The Sumerians were among the first to codify laws, with the Code of Ur-Nammu predating the more famous Code of Hammurabi by several centuries.
This legal code established laws related to property, marriage, and criminal justice, providing a foundation for future legal systems in the region. The Sumerians' contributions to mathematics are also notable. They developed a system based on the number 60, which still influences how we measure time today. They also created a lunar calendar to track the phases of the moon, which was essential for agricultural planning, allowing the Sumerians to time their planting and harvesting cycles with precision. In addition to their work in mathematics and law, the Sumerians made remarkable advancements in engineering and architecture. They built extensive irrigation systems that controlled the flow of water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, allowing them to farm year-round and support large urban populations. Their architectural achievements included the construction of ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that served as religious centers. These structures symbolized the connection between the earthly realm and the divine, and were the focal point of Sumerian city-states. The Sumerians were also skilled in other areas, such as astronomy, where they made detailed observations of the stars and planets. They created star charts and were able to predict celestial events, including eclipses, which they believed were omens from the gods. Their understanding of the cosmos laid the groundwork for later developments in astronomy. The Sumerians also contributed to the development of literature and education. Sumerian schools, which trained scribes to read and write cuneiform, played a vital role in preserving and transmitting knowledge. These scribes recorded historical events, composed hymns and prayers, and ensured that the Sumerian language and culture were passed down to future generations. Despite these remarkable achievements, the Sumerian civilization eventually began to decline around 2000 BCE due to internal conflicts, environmental factors such as soil salinization caused by over-irrigation, and invasions by neighboring peoples. The Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon of Akkad, conquered the Sumerian city-states and established one of the first empires in history. However, even after the fall of Sumer, their legacy endured. The Akkadians adopted many aspects of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, religious beliefs, and legal codes. In the centuries that followed, the Babylonians and Assyrians inherited much of Sumerian culture, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, which continued to be an important work in the literary traditions of the ancient Near East. The Sumerians' influence also extended to other civilizations, including the Persians, Greeks, and Romans, who borrowed elements of Sumerian law, art, and literature. The Sumerian civilization's advancements in writing, law, mathematics, astronomy, and architecture laid the foundation for many of the achievements of later civilizations. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its exploration of mortality, friendship, and the human desire for immortality, remains one of the most profound works of ancient literature. The story's themes resonate with readers even today, offering timeless insights into the human experience. The Sumerians, through their innovations and achievements, left an indelible mark on the world, influencing the course of history and shaping the development of human civilization. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its blend of myth, adventure, and wisdom, stands as a testament to the enduring human quest for meaning, the desire to overcome death, and the recognition of the importance of legacy. This ancient epic, along with the many other contributions of the Sumerian civilization, reminds us of the profound achievements of early human societies and the timeless themes that continue to resonate through literature, philosophy, and human thought. The Sumerians were not just the creators of the world's first writing system, they were also the founders of a civilization that set the stage for the advancements and achievements that would follow in the ancient world.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest to develop in the Fertile Crescent, arose in the southern part of Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE. It flourished in the valley between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, an area that provided fertile land for agriculture. The Sumerians were responsible for many of the earliest advances in human civilization, including the creation of one of the first systems of writing, cuneiform. The cuneiform script, originally developed to record transactions and keep account of trade, gradually evolved into a more sophisticated form, used to document laws, stories, and historical events. One of the most enduring works of Sumerian literature is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a story that has survived for millennia and remains one of the most important literary works in the history of mankind. The epic centers around Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, a city-state in ancient Sumer. Gilgamesh, who is described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, is known for his strength, wisdom, and beauty, but his reign is marked by arrogance and cruelty. His people, burdened by his excesses, pray to the gods for relief. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to be Gilgamesh's equal and challenge his dominance. The first encounter between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is one of struggle, but the battle ends in a draw, leading to mutual respect. The two men become inseparable friends and embark on several adventurous quests, most notably their journey to the cedar forest, where they defeat Humbaba, the fearsome guardian of the forest. After this victory, the goddess Ishtar falls in love with Gilgamesh, but when he rejects her advances, she sends the bull of heaven to punish him. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull, enraging the gods. In response to their defiance, the gods decree that Enkidu must die, and he succumbs to a painful illness. The loss of Enkidu overwhelms Gilgamesh, who is consumed by grief and fear of his own mortality. His sorrow leads him to seek the secret of immortality, and he sets off on a perilous journey to find Utnapishtim, a figure who was granted eternal life by the gods after surviving a great flood. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh the story of the flood, which bears striking similarities to the later biblical tale of Noah's Ark. Despite learning that immortality is reserved for the gods, Gilgamesh continues his search, determined to find a way to escape death. However, Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as a test, which Gilgamesh fails. Realizing that death is inevitable, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, where he reflects on the meaning of life and comes to understand that while immortality is beyond human reach, one's deeds and legacy can endure through the generations. He recognizes that it is not the pursuit of immortality that matters, but the impact one has on the world. Gilgamesh's return to Uruk marks a profound change in his character. He now accepts his mortality and understands that his legacy will live on through his accomplishments and the city he built. This realization allows him to rule his people with wisdom and compassion, ensuring the prosperity of Uruk for future generations. The Epic of Gilgamesh is more than just a tale of adventure and friendship. It is a profound meditation on life, death, and the human desire for meaning. The story explores themes that resonate deeply with the human experience, including the inevitability of death, the importance of friendship, and the quest for immortality. In addition to its literary significance, the epic also offers valuable insights into Sumerian culture, religion, and society. The Sumerians believed that the gods were omnipotent beings who controlled all aspects of life, from the fertility of the land to the fate of individuals. They viewed their kings as divine representatives of the gods on earth, entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining the balance between the divine and the human realms. The king's role was to ensure the prosperity of the city-state and to protect it from the wrath of the gods. This belief in divine kingship is reflected in the story of Gilgamesh, whose journey is not only one of personal growth but also of spiritual awakening. The Sumerian city-states, which were often in competition with one another, were each centered around a temple dedicated to a particular god or goddess. These temples were the focal point of religious life and served as centers for administration and governance. The Sumerians' achievements in architecture and engineering were significant, with the construction of ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that served as temples, and the development of complex irrigation systems that allowed them to manage the flow of water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
These innovations helped sustain the population of the city-states and enabled them to thrive in the harsh environment of Mesopotamia. In addition to their accomplishments in architecture and engineering, the Sumerians also made significant advances in mathematics and science. They developed a number system based on the number 60, which is still used today in the division of time into hours, minutes, and seconds. Their understanding of astronomy allowed them to track the movements of the stars and planets, leading to the creation of a lunar calendar. This calendar was essential for agricultural planning, as it enabled the Sumerians to predict the best times for planting and harvesting crops. Despite the many accomplishments of the Sumerian civilization, it eventually began to decline around 2000 BCE due to a combination of internal conflict, invasions by neighboring peoples, and environmental changes, including soil salinization caused by over-irrigation. The Akkadian Empire, under the leadership of Sargon of Akkad, conquered the Sumerian city-states and established one of the world's first empires. However, even after the fall of the Sumerians, their influence lived on through the Akkadians, who adopted many elements of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, religious practices, and legal codes. The legacy of the Sumerian civilization continued to shape the development of future civilizations, including the Babylonians, Assyrians, and Persians. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its profound exploration of human emotions, the quest for immortality, and the inevitability of death, continued to be an important literary and philosophical text for generations. Its themes of friendship, loss, and the search for meaning resonate with people across cultures and time periods, demonstrating the timeless nature of human struggles and aspirations. As one of the earliest examples of literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh has had a lasting impact on the way stories are told, serving as an inspiration for countless works of fiction, drama, and poetry. The Sumerians, through their contributions to writing, law, and mathematics, laid the foundation for many of the advancements that followed in the ancient world. Their accomplishments in governance, literature, and science shaped the course of history and influenced civilizations throughout the ancient Near East and beyond. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its profound exploration of human emotions, the quest for immortality, and the inevitability of death, continues to resonate with readers around the world, offering timeless insights into the nature of existence, the search for meaning, and the ultimate quest for immortality.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential in history, emerged around 4000 BCE in the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This civilization gave rise to the first urban societies and is credited with many pioneering achievements, including the invention of writing, legal systems, and architectural marvels like the ziggurats. The Sumerians developed cuneiform, one of the earliest writing systems, which allowed them to record everything from agricultural transactions to religious rituals. This ability to write not only facilitated the governance of their growing city-states, but also enabled the Sumerians to create some of the first literary works, most notably the Epic of Gilgamesh. The epic recounts the journey of Gilgamesh, king of the Sumerian city of Uruk, who is described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, possessing great strength, intelligence, and beauty. However, his reign is marked by arrogance, as he is a harsh and selfish ruler who does not care for the well-being of his people. The citizens of Uruk, oppressed by his oppressive rule, pray to the gods for help. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh and balance his power. Enkidu, initially ignorant of civilization, is introduced to human life through Shamhat, a temple prostitute who teaches him the ways of society. Once civilized, Enkidu becomes more human and eventually meets Gilgamesh. The two men engage in a fierce battle, but the struggle ends in a draw and they form a strong bond of friendship. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on a series of heroic adventures.
One of their most significant exploits is their journey to the cedar forest, where they confront and defeat Humbaba, the terrifying guardian of the forest. Afterward, Gilgamesh gains fame and recognition, but his rejection of the goddess Ishtar, who has fallen in love with him, leads to divine retribution. Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish Gilgamesh, and together he and Enkidu slay the bull, further angering the gods. As punishment for their actions, the gods decree that Enkidu must die. Enkidu's death is a devastating blow to Gilgamesh, who is consumed with grief and fear of his own mortality. The loss of his beloved friend leads Gilgamesh to embark on a quest to discover the secret of immortality. He travels far and wide, eventually seeking out Utnapishtim, an immortal man who survived a great flood sent by the gods to destroy humanity. Utnapishtim recounts the story of the flood, which bears similarities to the biblical story of Noah's Ark. He tells Gilgamesh that immortality is a divine gift and cannot be attained by mortals. Despite hearing this, Gilgamesh continues to search for a way to avoid death. Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as proof of his worthiness for immortality, but Gilgamesh fails the test. Realizing that death is inevitable and immortality unattainable, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, where he reflects on his life and accepts his fate. He realizes that while immortality may not be within his reach, his legacy can live on through the city he built and the deeds he accomplished. The Epic of Gilgamesh explores profound themes of life, death, and the human desire for immortality. It reflects the Sumerian worldview, where the gods were seen as powerful and often capricious beings who could reward or punish humans based on their actions. The relationship between gods and humans is central to the epic, with Gilgamesh's quest being driven by his desire to escape the ultimate fate of all mortals, death. In addition to its exploration of mortality, the epic delves into the complexities of friendship, as seen in the bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu. The two heroes share deep mutual respect, and their adventures together demonstrate the strength of their friendship. The epic also reflects the Sumerian understanding of kingship, with Gilgamesh initially embodying the flaws of a ruler who is disconnected from his people, only to mature into a more self-aware and compassionate leader. Beyond the personal journey of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian civilization itself made remarkable contributions to human development. The Sumerians were pioneers in law and governance, with the creation of one of the earliest known legal codes, the Code of Ur-Nammu. This code, which predated the more famous Code of Hammurabi, provided guidelines for justice in matters of property, marriage, and criminal punishment. It also reflected the Sumerian belief in divine kingship, where the ruler was seen as the representative of the gods and responsible for maintaining order and justice. The Sumerians also made significant strides in mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. Their base 60 numeral system, still used today in the measurement of time, was groundbreaking and reflected their advanced understanding of numbers. In astronomy, the Sumerians developed a lunar calendar, which was essential for agricultural activities. They observed the movements of the stars and planets and used this knowledge to predict celestial events like eclipses, which they believed were omens. In engineering, the Sumerians created advanced irrigation systems that allowed them to manage the flow of water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This technology enabled them to farm year-round, providing a stable food supply for the growing population of their city-states. The Sumerians also constructed monumental architecture, most notably the ziggurats, towering structures that served as religious centers and were symbolic of the connection between the gods and humans. These ziggurats were massive stepped pyramids made of mud bricks, and their construction required sophisticated engineering skills. Despite their remarkable achievements, the Sumerian civilization began to decline around 2000 BCE, Internal strife, environmental degradation, and invasions by neighboring peoples contributed to the fall of the Sumerian city-states. The Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon of Akkad, eventually conquered the Sumerians and established one of the first empires in history. Even so, Sumerian culture endured and was adopted by successive empires, including the Babylonians and Assyrians. Many elements of Sumerian culture, such as their writing system, religious practices, and legal codes, were passed down and shaped the development of later civilizations. The Epic of Gilgamesh itself continued to be preserved and adapted by the Babylonians, who added their own elements to the story. The influence of the Sumerian is also evident in the religious and political systems of later civilizations, as their beliefs in the gods' control over human affairs and the divine role of kings would resonate in cultures throughout the ancient world. The Sumerian civilization's contributions to literature, law, science, and architecture laid the foundation for the development of future societies. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its exploration of mortality and the pursuit of immortality, remains a key text in understanding the ancient human quest for meaning. Its themes of friendship, loss, and the acceptance of death continue to resonate with readers across the world, making it one of the most important and enduring works of literature. The Sumerians' innovations in writing, governance, and technology laid the groundwork for many of the achievements that followed in the ancient world. Their legacy continues to influence our understanding of the origins of civilization, and the Epic of Gilgamesh remains a timeless reflection on the human experience.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential in history, flourished around 4000 BCE in the southern part of Mesopotamia, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This fertile region was the birthplace of agriculture and urbanization, allowing the Sumerians to create one of the first sophisticated societies. With their innovations in writing, law, mathematics, and architecture, the Sumerians laid the foundation for future civilizations. One of their most enduring legacies is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a profound literary work that has had a lasting impact on human culture and thought. The epic tells the story of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, a powerful but flawed ruler described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Despite his great strength and wisdom, Gilgamesh abuses his power, treating his subjects harshly. The people of Uruk, suffering under his reign, pray to the gods for relief. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh and balance his power. Enkidu is introduced to human civilization by Shamhat, a temple prostitute, who teaches him the ways of society. Once civilized, Enkidu meets Gilgamesh, and the two engage in a fierce battle. Their confrontation ends in mutual respect, and the two men form a deep friendship. Together, they embark on a series of heroic quests. The most significant of these is their journey to the cedar forest, where they confront and defeat Humbaba, the fearsome guardian of the forest. Their victory gains them fame, but it also incurs the wrath of the gods. The goddess Ishtar, falling in love with Gilgamesh, proposes marriage to him. When he rejects her, she sends the bull of heaven to punish him. Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull, further angering the gods. As punishment, the gods decree that Enkidu must die. Enkidu's death is a devastating blow to Gilgamesh, and he is overwhelmed with grief and fear of his own mortality. Consumed by sorrow, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find the secret of immortality. He travels to the ends of the earth in search of Utnapishtim, a figure who was granted eternal life by the gods after surviving a great flood. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh the story of the flood, which closely mirrors the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. He explains that immortality is a divine gift reserved only for the gods. Undeterred, Gilgamesh continues his quest, hoping to find a way to escape death.
Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as a test of his worthiness. However, Gilgamesh fails the test, and upon realizing the futility of his quest, he accepts the reality of death. Returning to Uruk, he reflects on his life and concludes that while immortality is beyond human reach, one's legacy can endure through the city they built and the deeds they accomplished. This realization allows Gilgamesh to return to his people, where he assumes a more self-aware and compassionate role as their leader. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a rich exploration of themes such as mortality, friendship, and the search for meaning in life. It reflects the Sumerian view of the gods as powerful beings who controlled human destiny, often punishing or rewarding people according to their actions. The epic also highlights the importance of human connections, especially the bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, which serves as the emotional heart of the story. Their friendship exemplifies the transformative power of relationships as Enkidu helps Gilgamesh grow beyond his arrogance. The story also explores the idea that the pursuit of immortality, while a common human desire, is ultimately futile. It is the impact one has on the world and the legacy they leave behind that grants a form of immortality. In addition to its philosophical insights, the Epic of Gilgamesh provides a window into Sumerian society and culture. The Sumerians were pioneers in law and governance, developing one of the earliest legal codes, the Code of Ur-Nammu, which addressed matters such as property, marriage, and crime. This code reflects the Sumerian belief in the king as the divine representative on earth, responsible for ensuring justice and maintaining order. The Sumerians' contributions to mathematics were also groundbreaking. Their base 60 numeral system, still used today to measure time, was one of their most important inventions. This system reflects their advanced understanding of numbers and its application in daily life, particularly in the calculation of time and the development of a lunar calendar for agricultural purposes. The Sumerians also made remarkable strides in engineering and architecture. They constructed elaborate irrigation systems to manage the flow of water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, enabling them to farm year-round and support large urban populations. Their architectural feats included the construction of ziggurats, towering step pyramids that served as religious temples and administrative centers. These structures symbolized the connection between the gods and the human world, serving as a focal point for both worship and governance. The Sumerians' knowledge of astronomy was similarly advanced. They made detailed observations of the stars and planets, which allowed them to track celestial movements and predict events like eclipses. This knowledge played a critical role in their agricultural practices, as they used the stars to guide the planting and harvesting cycles. Despite their many achievements, the Sumerian civilization eventually declined around 2000 BCE due to internal strife, invasions by neighboring peoples, and environmental challenges such as soil salinization caused by over-irrigation. The Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon of Akkad, conquered the Sumerians and established one of the world's first empires. However, the Akkadians inherited much of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, religious practices, and legal codes. The legacy of Sumer continued to shape the development of future civilizations, particularly in Mesopotamia, where the Babylonians and Assyrians adopted many elements of Sumerian culture. The Epic of Gilgamesh, in particular, was preserved and adapted by later civilizations, with the Babylonians adding their own elements to the story. The themes explored in the epic, such as the human search for immortality, the importance of friendship, and the acceptance of death, resonated with successive generations and influenced later literature and philosophy. The Sumerian civilization, with its many achievements in law, literature, science, and art, laid the groundwork for future civilizations, particularly in the ancient Near East. The legacy of the Sumerians can still be seen today in many aspects of modern life, from the use of the base 60 system in timekeeping to the continued influence of their literary and legal traditions. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its timeless themes and profound insights into the human condition, continues to captivate readers and scholars alike. Its exploration of the fragility of life and the desire for immortality remains relevant to this day as it speaks to universal aspects of the human experience. In the centuries that followed the decline of the Sumerian civilization, their achievements in writing, governance, and science were passed down and integrated into the cultures of the Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and beyond. Through these civilizations, the legacy of the Sumerians lived on, shaping the course of history and laying the foundation for future advances in human knowledge and culture. The Sumerians, with their remarkable contributions to civilization, played a crucial role in the development of human society, and the Epic of Gilgamesh remains a testament to their intellectual and cultural achievements. In the end, the story of Gilgamesh reminds us that while we may not be able to escape death, the impact we make in the world and the legacy we leave behind are the true measures of immortality. The epic stands as a powerful reflection on the importance of living a meaningful life, forging deep connections with others, and accepting the inevitable passage of time.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest in human history, not only laid the foundations for urban society, but also contributed significantly to the advancement of various fields, such as writing, law, astronomy, and mathematics. It is considered the birthplace of many aspects of modern civilization, with the development of the first known writing system, cuneiform, being a key achievement. Cuneiform was initially used for accounting and record-keeping, and as it evolved, it was adapted for recording laws, epic tales, and religious texts. One of the most enduring pieces of Sumerian literature is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a poem that reflects the cultural values, religious beliefs, and concerns of the Sumerian people. The epic centers on Gilgamesh, the semi-divine king of Uruk, whose strength and intellect make him a formidable ruler. However, his arrogance and disregard for his people's well-being cause unrest. The citizens of Uruk, unable to bear his tyrannical rule, pray to the gods for intervention. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh's power and provide him with an equal. Enkidu's introduction to human civilization is facilitated by Shamhat, a temple prostitute who teaches him the ways of human society. Through Shamhat, Enkidu becomes acquainted with human customs, food, and drink, and his life with the animals is forever changed. The arrival of Enkidu in Uruk sets the stage for an epic confrontation between the two men. The initial battle between Gilgamesh and Enkidu ends in a stalemate, but rather than remaining enemies, they forge a deep bond of friendship. This relationship becomes the cornerstone of the epic, and together Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on a series of dangerous quests. The first of these is a journey to the cedar forest, where they confront Humbaba, the monstrous guardian of the forest. Humbaba, who serves as the will of the gods, is feared by all, but with their combined strength and determination, Gilgamesh and Enkidu defeat him, cutting down the sacred cedar trees and earning the wrath of the gods. This act of defiance marks a turning point in the epic, as the gods begin to view Gilgamesh and Enkidu's actions with increasing hostility. The goddess Ishtar, enraged by Gilgamesh's rejection of her romantic advances, sends the bull of heaven to punish him. The bull's arrival is a celestial event that disrupts the natural order, and in response, Gilgamesh and Enkidu fight and kill the bull, provoking the gods to retaliate with even greater vengeance. As punishment for their defiance, the gods decree that Enkidu must die, and he succumbs to a painful illness. Enkidu's death sends Gilgamesh into a deep mourning,
and he becomes consumed by the fear of his own mortality. Stricken like grief and faced with the inevitability of death, Gilgamesh sets out on a quest to discover the secret of immortality. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a figure who was granted eternal life by the gods after surviving a catastrophic flood, a story that closely mirrors the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. Utnapishtim recounts the tale of the flood in which he built a great boat to survive the deluge that the gods sent to destroy humanity. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh that immortality is a gift bestowed only upon the gods, and that death is the natural fate of all mortals. Nevertheless, Gilgamesh persists in his search for eternal life, and Utnapishtim challenges him to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as proof of his worthiness. Gilgamesh fails this test, and the realization that death cannot be avoided becomes painfully clear. Utnapishtim tells him that the quest for eternal life is a futile one, and that it is the deeds one accomplishes during their lifetime that matter, not the pursuit of eternal life. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, forever changed by his journey, now accepting the inevitability of death. Upon his return, he reflects on his life and the legacy he has built in his city. While immortality remains out of reach, Gilgamesh comes to understand that the most meaningful way to live is by contributing to the greater good and leaving behind a lasting legacy. He decides to rule Uruk with wisdom, ensuring that his city continues to prosper and thrive long after his death. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just a story of a hero's journey, but a meditation on the nature of mortality, friendship, and legacy. The themes of death and immortality are universal, resonating with readers across centuries and cultures. The story of Gilgamesh's quest for eternal life speaks to the human desire to transcend the limitations of the mortal condition. Yet the ultimate lesson of the epic is that immortality is a gift meant only for the gods, and that it is the deeds one accomplishes during their lifetime that matter, not the pursuit of eternal life. The Sumerians' worldview, as reflected in the epic, was centered around the idea that the gods held ultimate control over human destiny, and that humans were meant to serve and honor them. However, the story also suggests that while humans may not be able to challenge the gods' authority, they can still find meaning and purpose in life through their actions and relationships. The friendship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu exemplifies the transformative power of companionship, showing how relationships can shape individuals and help them grow beyond their flaws. The epic also highlights the idea of kingship, as Gilgamesh evolves from a self-centered ruler to a wise and compassionate leader, guided by the understanding that his responsibility is to serve his people. The Sumerians' contributions to civilization extended beyond their literature and myths, leaving a lasting impact on various fields, such as law, mathematics, and science. The Sumerians are credited with developing one of the first legal codes, the Code of Ur-Nammu, which set forth laws regarding justice, property, and marriage. This legal framework reflects the Sumerian belief in the role of the king as a divine representative who was responsible for upholding justice and ensuring order in society. The Sumerians' innovations in mathematics were equally significant, with their base 60 numeral system forming the foundation for many aspects of modern mathematics and timekeeping. This system influenced the way we measure time, dividing the hour into 60 minutes and the minute into 60 seconds. In addition to their advances in mathematics, the Sumerians made strides in astronomy, developing a lunar calendar and charting the positions of stars and planets. Their observations of celestial bodies enabled them to predict the movements of the moon and planets, and their knowledge of the stars played an important role in agricultural planning. In terms of engineering and architecture, the Sumerians are renowned for constructing sophisticated irrigation systems that allowed them to control the flow of water from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, ensuring a steady supply of water for crops and enabling the growth of large urban populations. They also built impressive structures such as the ziggurats, which served as temples and religious centers. These massive stepped pyramids symbolized the connection between the earthly realm and the divine, and they were central to the religious and political life of Sumerian cities. Despite their many achievements, the Sumerian civilization began to decline around 2000 BCE. Internal conflicts, invasions by neighboring peoples, and environmental factors such as soil salinization contributed to the collapse of the Sumerian city-states. The Akkadian Empire, led by Sargon of Akkad, eventually conquered the Sumerians and established the first known empire. However, even after the fall of the Sumerian civilization, their cultural achievements continued to influence later civilizations, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The legacy of Sumerian culture, including their writing system, religious beliefs, and legal codes, was passed down and integrated into the traditions of these subsequent empires. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which had been preserved by the Babylonians, continued to be a key text in the literary traditions of the ancient Near East. The story's exploration of mortality, immortality, and the human search for meaning resonated with generations of readers, inspiring countless works of literature, philosophy, and art. The Sumerians' contributions to human civilization, especially in the fields of writing, law, and mathematics, paved the way for many of the advancements that followed. The Epic of Gilgamesh stands as one of the earliest and most important works of literature, and its themes continue to resonate with people around the world, making it a timeless reflection on the human experience. The Sumerian civilization's legacy, through its contributions to literature, science, and culture, continues to shape the development of human civilization, and the lessons of Gilgamesh's journey remain relevant to this day.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential in human history, arose in the fertile region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in southern Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE. Known for pioneering many aspects of civilization, including writing, law, and urbanization, the Sumerians developed cuneiform, one of the first systems of writing. This system was initially used for record-keeping, but later adapted to document history, laws, and religious texts. The most famous of these documents is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a literary masterpiece that not only reflects Sumerian culture, but also explores universal themes of friendship, mortality, and the search for immortality. The epic is centered around Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, a city-state in Sumer. Described as two-thirds divine and one-third human, Gilgamesh is a powerful, wise, and beautiful ruler, but his arrogance leads to the oppression of his people. The people of Uruk, suffering under his reign, pray to the gods for relief. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to serve as Gilgamesh's equal and challenge his dominance. Enkidu, unacquainted with civilization, is introduced to human life by Shamhat, a temple prostitute, who teaches him the ways of society. After becoming civilized, Enkidu meets Gilgamesh and the two engage in a battle. The contest ends in a stalemate and they form a deep and enduring bond of friendship. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on a series of adventures, the most significant of which is their journey to the cedar forest. There, they confront and defeat Humbaba, the terrifying guardian of the forest, earning both fame and the anger of the gods. After this victory, the goddess Ishtar falls in love with Gilgamesh, but he rejects her advances. Enraged, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish him. Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull, further inciting the wrath of the gods. As punishment for their defiance, the gods decree that Enkidu must die. Enkidu's death leaves Gilgamesh grief-stricken and fearful of his own mortality. Overcome by sorrow, Gilgamesh sets out on a quest to find the secret of immortality. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a man who was granted eternal life by the gods after surviving a great flood, which bears a striking resemblance to the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. Utnapishtim recounts the story of the flood, explaining that immortality is a divine gift reserved only for the gods. Despite learning that immortality is beyond his reach, Gilgamesh persists in seeking a way to escape death. Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as a test, but Gilgamesh fails. Realizing the futility of his quest, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, where he comes to terms with his own mortality. He reflects on his life and realizes that while immortality may be unattainable, the legacy one leaves behind through deeds and accomplishments is the true form of immortality. Gilgamesh decides to focus on his people, ruling with wisdom and ensuring the prosperity of Uruk for future generations. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just an adventure tale, but a profound meditation on the human experience. Through Gilgamesh's journey, the epic addresses the universal desire for immortality and the acceptance of death. The Sumerians' belief in divine kingship is reflected in the epic, as Gilgamesh's quest for immortality can be seen as a search for divine favor. The gods are central figures in Sumerian society, controlling the forces of nature and human fate. In the epic, the gods' power is absolute, and their actions drive the plot, illustrating the Sumerian belief in the gods' control over all aspects of life. The Sumerians' advancements in law and governance are also evident in the epic, particularly in the portrayal of Gilgamesh's leadership. The concept of justice, as seen in the Code of Ur-Nammu, which predates the more famous Code of Hammurabi, is central to the Sumerian worldview. The king's role was to maintain order and ensure the welfare of the city-state, as Gilgamesh's eventual transformation from a tyrant to a wise ruler reflects. Sumerian innovations in mathematics and science are also reflected in the epic, particularly in the way the story is structured. The Sumerians used a base 60 numeral system, which influenced modern timekeeping. Their understanding of astronomy is evident in the detailed observations of celestial events, such as eclipses, that feature prominently in the epic. The Sumerians' contributions to engineering, particularly in the construction of ziggurats and irrigation systems, helped sustain their society and enabled it to thrive in the challenging environment of Mesopotamia. These achievements in agriculture and architecture were key to the success of Sumerian city-states, and they laid the groundwork for later empires. The decline of the Sumerian civilization around 2000 BCE was caused by a combination of factors, including internal conflict, environmental changes, and invasions by neighboring peoples. Despite this, the Sumerian cultural legacy lived on through the Akkadian Empire, which adopted many Sumerian practices, including the cuneiform writing system. The Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians all inherited elements of Sumerian culture, ensuring that the Sumerian contributions to civilization continued to shape the ancient world long after the fall of their city-states. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its universal themes and emotional depth, has endured through the ages, remaining a powerful and influential work. Its exploration of friendship, mortality, and the quest for meaning continues to resonate with readers across cultures and time periods. The Sumerians' innovations in writing, law, and science have left an indelible mark on human history, and the lessons of Gilgamesh's journey remain relevant to this day. As one of the earliest known works of literature, the epic offers timeless insights into the human condition and continues to inspire reflections on life, death, and the search for immortality. The legacy of Sumerian civilization, particularly through the story of Gilgamesh, continues to influence modern thought, reminding us that while we may not be able to avoid death, we can leave behind a lasting legacy through our actions and relationships.
The Sumerian civilization, known for being one of the earliest and most influential societies in human history, developed around 4000 BCE in the fertile region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in southern Mesopotamia. The Sumerians are credited with many advancements that formed the foundation of modern civilization, including the invention of writing, the development of a legal system, and the establishment of urban societies. Their most enduring cultural legacy is their writing system, cuneiform, which was initially created for record-keeping and later used for documenting religious texts, laws, and epic stories. One of the most famous literary works from this civilization is the Epic of Gilgamesh, an ancient poem that tells the story of Gilgamesh, the king of the Sumerian city-state of Uruk. Gilgamesh is described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, making him extraordinarily powerful, wise, and beautiful. Despite his many virtues, Gilgamesh is portrayed as a tyrant, exploiting his citizens and using his power for selfish purposes. The people of Uruk, unable to bear the burden of his arrogance and cruelty, cry out to the gods for relief. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh's strength and authority. Enkidu, initially unaware of human customs, is introduced to civilization by Shamhat, a temple prostitute, who teaches him the ways of society. Enkidu, once transformed from a wild being to a human one, travels to Uruk where he meets Gilgamesh. The two engage in a fierce battle, but neither gains a clear victory, and they soon recognize each other's strength and form a deep bond of friendship. This friendship becomes central to the epic as Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on various heroic adventures. Their first significant quest is a journey to the cedar forest, where they confront Humbaba, the fearsome guardian of the forest. They defeat Humbaba and cut down the sacred cedar trees, an act that angers the gods. As punishment, the goddess Ishtar falls in love with Gilgamesh and proposes marriage, but he rejects her, leading to her fury. In retaliation, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull, angering the gods even further. The gods then decree that Enkidu must die, and Enkidu falls ill and dies. His death is a devastating blow to Gilgamesh, who is overwhelmed with grief and fear of his own mortality. In his sorrow, Gilgamesh begins to question the meaning of life and the inevitability of death. He embarks on a quest to find the secret of immortality, determined to avoid the same fate that befell his friend. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood sent by the gods and was granted eternal life. Utnapishtim recounts the story of the flood, which mirrors the biblical tale of Noah's Ark, and explains that immortality is a divine gift given only to the gods. Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as a test of his worthiness for immortality. However, Gilgamesh fails the test, falling asleep, and realizing that immortality is beyond his reach. Utnapishtim, though sympathetic, tells Gilgamesh that death is the natural fate of all mortals. Realizing the futility of his quest for immortality, Gilgamesh accepts that death is unavoidable, and that what matters is the legacy one leaves behind. Returning to Uruk, Gilgamesh reflects on his life and comes to understand that immortality cannot be achieved through the avoidance of death, but through living a life that leaves a lasting impact. He decides to focus on his people and rule Uruk with wisdom, ensuring that the city thrives and prospers even after his death. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a profound exploration of themes such as mortality, the search for immortality, and the importance of friendship. Through Gilgamesh's journey, the epic portrays the universal human desire to transcend death and the eventual acceptance of mortality. Gilgamesh's evolution from a selfish and oppressive ruler to a wise and compassionate leader reflects the Sumerian view of kingship, which was believed to be divinely ordained. The king was seen as a representative of the gods, tasked with maintaining justice and the welfare of the people. In the beginning, Gilgamesh is a flawed ruler who does not care for the needs of his people. However, through his friendship with Enkidu and the trials he faces, he learns the importance of wisdom, humility, and service to others. Enkidu's death is a pivotal moment in the epic, pushing Gilgamesh to confront the reality of death and seek answers to the fundamental question of human existence: what happens after death? His search for immortality symbolizes the deep human fear of mortality and the desire for a legacy that outlasts one's physical life. Despite his failure to achieve immortality, Gilgamesh learns that his actions during his life, his accomplishments, and his relationships are what truly give him meaning. The relationship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is one of the most powerful aspects of the epic, highlighting the importance of friendship and companionship. Their bond allows Gilgamesh to grow emotionally, teaching him the value of mutual respect, loyalty, and support. Enkidu is a mirror for Gilgamesh, helping him recognize his flaws and guiding him towards self-awareness. Their adventures together not only shape Gilgamesh's character, but also deepen the epic's exploration of themes such as love, loss, and the passage of time. Throughout the epic, the gods play an integral role in shaping the events and outcomes, illustrating the Sumerian belief that the gods controlled human destiny. The gods are depicted as powerful, capricious beings who can reward or punish mortals based on their actions. They are both protectors and adversaries, granting blessings and causing suffering. Gilgamesh's relationship with the gods evolves throughout the epic. Initially, he is unafraid to challenge the gods, as seen in his refusal to marry Ishtar and the slaying of the bull of heaven. However, after Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh becomes humble and recognizes the gods' ultimate authority. He seeks their favor and tries to understand their will, realizing that even the greatest of men cannot escape death. This theme of mortality and the inevitability of death is central to the epic. The Sumerians, like many ancient peoples, viewed death as an inescapable part of life, and the epic reflects this worldview. The pursuit of immortality, while a central theme in the epic, ultimately serves as a metaphor for the desire to make one's life meaningful. In the end, Gilgamesh learns that the only way to achieve a form of immortality is through the legacy left behind in the world. The story of the flood, as told by Utnapishtim, further reinforces the Sumerian understanding of divine power and human mortality. The flood narrative in the Epic of Gilgamesh shares similarities with the biblical account of Noah's Ark, suggesting a shared cultural heritage among ancient civilizations. The flood, which serves as a divine cleansing of humanity, is also a reminder of the transience of human life and the power of the gods. The epic ends with Gilgamesh's return to Uruk, where he reflects on his city's greatness and his own role in its history. The Epic of Gilgamesh, with its themes of friendship, mortality, and the search for meaning, has endured for thousands of years and remains one of the most important works of literature in human history. It continues to inspire readers and scholars, providing valuable insights into the human condition and the complexities of life and death. The Sumerians, through their literature, innovations, and cultural achievements, have left an indelible mark on the course of human history, reminding us of the enduring power of storytelling and the quest for meaning in an ever-changing world.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential societies in human history, emerged around 4000 BCE in southern Mesopotamia, an area known as the cradle of civilization, located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This civilization is renowned for creating the first system of writing, cuneiform, and laying the foundation for future advancements in law, literature, and mathematics. Among the many cultural legacies left by the Sumerians, the Epic of Gilgamesh stands out as one of the most enduring and influential works of literature. The epic centers around Gilgamesh, the king of the Sumerian city-state of Uruk,
described as 2/3 divine and 1/3 human, making him both extraordinarily powerful and remarkably arrogant. Despite his great strength and wisdom, Gilgamesh's character flaws, especially his abuse of power, lead him to oppress his people, forcing the citizens of Uruk to petition the gods for relief. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh's power. Enkidu, initially unaware of human customs, is introduced to civilization by Shamhat, a temple prostitute, who teaches him the ways of society. Enkidu, once civilized, becomes a companion to Gilgamesh, and the two engage in a fierce battle upon meeting. Their fight ends in mutual respect, and they form a deep bond of friendship. This bond becomes central to the narrative as the two embark on a series of heroic quests, the most significant being their journey to the cedar forest. There, they confront and defeat Humbaba, the monstrous guardian of the forest, a task that earns them both fame and the ire of the gods. This victory, however, comes at a cost, as it provokes the wrath of the gods, and they punish the two heroes. Afterward, the goddess Ishtar, smitten with Gilgamesh, proposes marriage to him, but he rejects her. In retaliation, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish him, and Gilgamesh and Enkidu are forced to fight and kill the bull, further incurring the gods' anger. As punishment for their defiance, the gods decree that Enkidu must die, and he succumbs to a painful illness, causing Gilgamesh immense grief. Devastated by the loss of his friend, Gilgamesh becomes consumed with a fear of death and a desire to find the secret of immortality. His quest leads him to Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood sent by the gods and was granted eternal life. Utnapishtim recounts the story of the flood, which closely mirrors the biblical tale of Noah's Ark, and reveals that immortality is a divine gift granted only to the gods. Despite this knowledge, Gilgamesh persists in his search for eternal life. Utnapishtim challenges him to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as a test, but Gilgamesh fails. This failure teaches Gilgamesh that immortality is not for mortals, and he must accept the reality of death. Utnapishtim, understanding Gilgamesh's plight, further teaches him that the gift of eternal life is not within the reach of humans. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, where he reflects on his journey and the nature of life and death. He realizes that immortality cannot be achieved through defiance of death, but rather through the legacy one leaves behind. He focuses on his people, deciding to rule Uruk with wisdom and ensure that the city flourishes long after his own death. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not merely a heroic adventure, but a meditation on existential themes, particularly the fear of death, the search for immortality, and the meaning of life. The transformation of Gilgamesh from a tyrannical ruler to a wise and compassionate leader illustrates the Sumerian belief in the divine nature of kingship. The king, according to Sumerian thought, was the earthly representative of the gods, tasked with maintaining order and ensuring the welfare of his people. Initially, Gilgamesh is a selfish and oppressive ruler who abuses his power, but through his friendship with Enkidu and his encounters with the divine, he evolves into a leader who understands his responsibility to serve his people. This transformation is also reflected in the deep bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, whose relationship becomes the emotional heart of the epic. Enkidu's death forces Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality, prompting him to embark on a quest to find immortality. This quest symbolizes the universal human desire to transcend death and the fear of being forgotten. However, by the end of the epic, Gilgamesh learns that immortality is a divine prerogative, and the best one can do is to live a life of significance, leaving behind a lasting legacy. The epic also explores the theme of friendship, which is portrayed as a powerful and transformative force. Gilgamesh and Enkidu's relationship exemplifies how friendship can shape a person's character and help them overcome their flaws. Through their adventures together, Enkidu helps Gilgamesh grow emotionally, teaching him the value of compassion, humility, and loyalty. The friendship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu highlights the importance of human connections, and their bond serves as a reminder that the journey of life is shared with others. The gods play an important role throughout the epic, reflecting the Sumerian worldview that the gods controlled the fate of mortals. The gods in the epic are depicted as powerful, often capricious beings who reward or punish humans based on their actions. Gilgamesh's interactions with the gods evolve throughout the narrative. In the beginning, he is fearless and even defiant toward them, challenging their authority. However, after Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh comes to recognize that the gods hold absolute power over the lives of mortals, and he learns to accept their decisions. The gods' control of fate is a key theme in the epic, underscoring the Sumerian belief that humans were subject to divine will. The epic also explores the idea that death is an inevitable part of life. Utnapishtim's story of the flood and the subsequent lessons Gilgamesh learns reinforces the notion that immortality is reserved for the gods, and mortals must accept their own mortality. The Sumerians, like many ancient peoples, viewed death as a natural part of existence, and the epic's treatment of mortality highlights the fragility of human life. Despite his quest for immortality, Gilgamesh ultimately learns that the true measure of a person's life is the impact they have on the world, rather than the desire for eternal life. The legacy one leaves behind is the only form of immortality available to humans, and this realization leads Gilgamesh to devote himself to the welfare of Uruk. The Sumerians' achievements in law, mathematics, and astronomy are also reflected in the epic. The Sumerians are credited with creating one of the earliest legal codes, the Code of Ur-Nammu, which influenced later legal systems, including the Code of Hammurabi. The Sumerians also developed a base 60 numeral system that is still used today to measure time. Their knowledge of astronomy, evident in the epic's references to celestial events, played an important role in their agricultural practices, as they used the stars to guide planting and harvesting. The Sumerians were also skilled engineers and architects, as demonstrated by the construction of ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that served as temples and centers of administration. These achievements, along with the development of complex irrigation systems, allowed the Sumerians to build one of the first advanced urban civilizations. Despite their many accomplishments, the Sumerian civilization began to decline around 2000 BCE due to internal conflict, invasions by neighboring peoples, and environmental challenges such as soil salinization caused by over-irrigation. The Akkadian Empire, under the leadership of Sargon of Akkad, eventually conquered the Sumerians, but the Akkadians adopted many elements of Sumerian culture, including their writing system and religious practices. The legacy of the Sumerians continued to shape future civilizations, particularly in the ancient Near East. The Epic of Gilgamesh was preserved and passed down through generations, influencing the literary traditions of later cultures, such as the Babylonians and Assyrians. The themes explored in the epic, including mortality, immortality, and the importance of human relationships, have resonated with readers across time and cultures, making the story of Gilgamesh one of the most enduring works of literature. The Sumerian civilization, with its contributions to writing, law, science, and culture, laid the groundwork for many of the advances that followed. The Epic of Gilgamesh, in particular, continues to captivate readers and scholars alike, offering timeless insights into the human condition and the quest for meaning in life. The Sumerians' legacy, through their innovations and cultural achievements, has left an indelible mark on human history, and the Epic of Gilgamesh remains a powerful reflection on the fragility of life, the inevitability of death, and the importance of living a meaningful life.
The Sumerian civilization, one of the oldest known human societies, arose around 4000 BCE in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
The Sumerians are credited with numerous achievements, including the development of one of the earliest known writing systems, cuneiform, which was used for recording everything from trade transactions to religious texts and epic literature. The most famous of these literary works is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a profound exploration of themes such as friendship, the search for immortality, and the nature of human existence. Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, is a powerful and semi-divine figure, two-thirds god and one-third human, whose strength, wisdom, and beauty are unmatched. However, his arrogance and cruelty toward his people lead to widespread suffering in his city. The citizens of Uruk, unable to bear his oppressive rule, pray to the gods for a solution. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, to challenge Gilgamesh's power. Enkidu's introduction to civilization is facilitated by Shamhat, a temple prostitute, who teaches him human ways. After a period of time, Enkidu, transformed into a man, travels to Uruk, where he meets Gilgamesh. The two engage in a fierce contest of strength, but the fight ends in a draw, and they realize their mutual respect and understanding. They become close friends, embarking together on heroic adventures that test their strength and resolve. Their first great quest takes them to the cedar forest, where they confront and defeat Humbaba, the terrifying guardian of the forest. This victory comes at a cost, as it angers the gods. The consequences of this act are soon felt when the goddess Ishtar, infatuated with Gilgamesh, proposes marriage to him. Gilgamesh rejects her, however, and in retaliation, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish him. Gilgamesh and Enkidu slay the bull, which further provokes the wrath of the gods. As punishment, the gods decree that Enkidu must die, and he falls ill, succumbing to a painful and prolonged death. Gilgamesh is devastated by the loss of his dear friend and is filled with an overwhelming fear of death. The realization that all mortals are destined to die weighs heavily on him, and he begins a quest to find immortality, hoping to prevent the same fate from befalling him. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, an immortal man who survived a great flood sent by the gods to destroy humanity, a tale that closely parallels the biblical story of Noah's Ark. Utnapishtim reveals that immortality is a divine gift bestowed only upon the gods, and that humans cannot escape the inevitable fate of death. However, he challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as a test of his worthiness for eternal life. Gilgamesh, exhausted by the journey and the emotional weight of his quest, fails the test, falling asleep before the end of the trial. Utnapishtim tells him that the quest for immortality is futile for mortals, and that, in the end, death is an essential part of the human condition. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, now accepting the reality of his mortality. As he reflects on his journey, he comes to realize that immortality is beyond him, and what truly matters is how one lives their life and the legacy they leave behind. In his grief, he recognizes that the best way to live on after death is to leave behind something meaningful. Determined to do so, Gilgamesh decides to focus on ruling Uruk with wisdom and ensuring its prosperity for generations to come. The epic ends with Gilgamesh reflecting on the city he has built, its great walls standing as a testament to his legacy. Through his journey, Gilgamesh transforms from a selfish and arrogant ruler to a wise and compassionate king, understanding that true immortality is found in the impact one has on others and the world around them. The Epic of Gilgamesh, while centered on one man's quest for immortality, also speaks to universal themes of friendship, death, and legacy. The friendship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is one of the most poignant aspects of the epic. Their bond not only serves as the foundation for the story, but also exemplifies the transformative power of companionship. Through Enkidu, Gilgamesh learns the value of loyalty, respect, and emotional depth, and their adventures together help Gilgamesh grow beyond his initial arrogance and selfishness. The bond between the two men highlights the idea that human relationships and emotional connections can help individuals overcome personal flaws and become better versions of themselves. Gilgamesh's evolution from a tyrant to a wise ruler reflects the Sumerian view of kingship. In Sumerian society, the king was seen as the representative of the gods on earth, tasked with maintaining order and justice in the kingdom. However, the king's power was not absolute, and his actions were subject to divine scrutiny. In Gilgamesh's case, his abuse of power led to suffering for his people, but through his journey, he learns that the role of a king is to serve the people, not to dominate them. This transformation mirrors the Sumerian belief that true leadership comes from humility and service. In addition to its exploration of kingship and friendship, the Epic of Gilgamesh is a meditation on death and the quest for immortality. The Sumerians, like many ancient peoples, believed that death was an inescapable part of life, and the epic reflects this worldview. Gilgamesh's quest to avoid death and his eventual acceptance of it highlights the human desire to transcend mortality and achieve eternal life. Yet through his encounters with the gods and Utnapishtim, Gilgamesh learns that immortality is beyond the reach of mortals. This realization forces him to confront the limits of human existence and to come to terms with the idea that the best way to live on after death is through one's deeds and accomplishments. Utnapishtim's story of the flood reinforces this message, as it underscores the idea that immortality is not meant for humans, and that death is a natural part of the human experience. The flood story, in which Utnapishtim builds a boat to survive the divine wrath, serves as a reminder of the transience of human life and the ultimate power of the gods. The gods, in the Sumerian worldview, were believed to control human destiny. They were capable of both benevolent and destructive actions, rewarding those who honored them and punishing those who defied them. Throughout the epic, Gilgamesh's interactions with the gods shape the narrative, and their decisions drive the course of events. In the beginning, Gilgamesh's actions are marked by defiance toward the gods, but after Enkidu dies, he comes to recognize the gods' ultimate authority and seeks their guidance. The gods' intervention in the lives of mortals reflects the Sumerian belief in divine control over human fate. In addition to exploring themes of death, immortality, and kingship, the Epic of Gilgamesh also highlights the Sumerians' contributions to law, literature, mathematics, and architecture. The Sumerians developed one of the earliest known legal codes, the Code of Ur-Nammu, which provided a framework for justice and order in society. The Sumerians also made significant advances in mathematics, particularly in their use of a base 60 numeral system, which influenced modern timekeeping. In astronomy, the Sumerians charted the movements of the stars and planets, creating a lunar calendar that helped them predict agricultural cycles. Their achievements in engineering and architecture are evident in the construction of ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that served as religious temples and administrative centers. These innovations allowed the Sumerians to build thriving urban centers and lay the groundwork for future civilizations. Despite the decline of the Sumerian civilization around 2000 BCE, their cultural achievements continued to influence the Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian empires. The Sumerian writing system, cuneiform, was adopted by subsequent civilizations and became the foundation for much of Mesopotamian literature. The Epic of Gilgamesh, preserved by the Babylonians, remained an important literary work and continued to influence later cultures, both in the Near East and beyond. The themes of the epic, particularly the exploration of mortality, friendship, and legacy, resonate with readers across time and space. The legacy of the Sumerian civilization, as reflected in the Epic of Gilgamesh, has had a lasting impact on human history, reminding us that the search for immortality, the bonds of friendship, and the acceptance of death are universal aspects of the human experience. The Epic of Gilgamesh remains one of the most important works of literature, offering profound insights into the human condition, and it continues to captivate readers and scholars alike, offering timeless lessons on life, death, and the meaning of existence.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known literary works, originates from the ancient Sumerian civilization, which flourished around 4000 BCE in Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The Sumerians are credited with many innovations that shaped the development of human civilization, including the creation of one of the earliest writing systems, cuneiform. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a profound narrative that explores timeless themes such as the search for immortality, the importance of friendship, and the inevitability of death. The protagonist, Gilgamesh, is the semi-divine king of Uruk, described as two-thirds god and one-third human, possessing extraordinary strength, wisdom, and beauty. However, Gilgamesh's overwhelming power and arrogance lead him to exploit his subjects, causing suffering throughout the city. The people of Uruk, unable to endure his oppressive rule, petition the gods for a solution. In response to their pleas, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals. Enkidu is initially unaware of human civilization and is introduced to it through Shamhat, a temple prostitute, who teaches him the ways of society. After a period of time, Enkidu, now fully human, travels to Uruk and encounters Gilgamesh. The two engage in a fierce contest of strength, with neither emerging victorious, and they form a strong bond of friendship. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on a series of daring adventures. Their first major undertaking is the journey to the cedar forest, where they confront Humbaba, the terrifying guardian of the forest. After a fierce battle, they defeat Humbaba, earning both fame and the wrath of the gods, as the forest is sacred to them. The gods, displeased with their actions, decide to punish Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Their troubles escalate when the goddess Ishtar, smitten with Gilgamesh, proposes marriage, but he rejects her advances, pointing out her past mistreatment of lovers. Enraged by his refusal, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish him. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, undeterred, defeat the bull of heaven, further inciting the gods' wrath. As punishment for their defiance, the gods decree that Enkidu must die. Enkidu succumbs to a painful illness and dies, leaving Gilgamesh devastated and deeply troubled by the reality of death. Enkidu's death shatters Gilgamesh, who becomes consumed with grief and fear of his own mortality. Unable to accept the loss of his friend and the inevitable nature of death, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find the secret to immortality. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a wise man who survived a great flood sent by the gods to destroy humanity. Utnapishtim shares his story with Gilgamesh, recounting how the gods spared him and his family by granting them eternal life after they survived the flood. The flood narrative closely parallels the biblical story of Noah's Ark. Utnapishtim reveals to Gilgamesh that immortality is a divine gift bestowed only upon the gods, and that mortals are destined to die. Despite this, Utnapishtim tests Gilgamesh's resolve, challenging him to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. If he succeeds, he will be granted eternal life. Gilgamesh, weary from his long journey and emotionally drained, fails the test, falling asleep almost immediately. Utnapishtim informs Gilgamesh that immortality is beyond his reach, a gift reserved solely for the gods. The message is clear: death is an inevitable part of the human experience. After learning this bitter truth, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, a changed man. As he reflects on his journey and his encounters with the divine, he comes to realize that immortality cannot be achieved through defiance of death.
Instead, Gilgamesh learns that the only way to live on after death is through the legacy one leaves behind. He recognizes that the meaningful life is one that is lived for others, leaving behind a legacy of accomplishments and deeds. In this realization, Gilgamesh decides to focus on ruling Uruk with wisdom and compassion, ensuring that the city thrives for generations to come. The Epic of Gilgamesh is more than just a heroic tale. It is a profound meditation on the nature of life, death, and human existence. The themes of mortality and immortality are central to the narrative, and Gilgamesh's quest for eternal life is a reflection of the universal human desire to transcend death. Yet, the epic also shows that immortality is a divine privilege, and humans must accept their mortality as an inherent part of their existence. The relationship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu forms the emotional core of the epic. Their friendship is transformative, not only for Gilgamesh, but also for Enkidu. Through their bond, Gilgamesh learns to move beyond his arrogance and selfishness, and Enkidu, in turn, experiences the depth of human emotions and relationships. Their shared adventures help Gilgamesh grow emotionally and spiritually, teaching him the importance of loyalty, love, and mutual respect. The role of the gods in the epic is another important aspect of the story. The gods are portrayed as powerful, capricious beings who control the fate of humans. They are not always benevolent, and they punish those who defy their will, as seen in the punishment of Gilgamesh and Enkidu for their killing of Humbaba and the Bull of Heaven. However, the gods also show moments of mercy, as in Utnapishtim's decision to reveal the secret of immortality to Gilgamesh. In this way, the epic reflects the Sumerian belief in divine power and the inescapable influence of the gods on human lives. The Sumerian worldview, as depicted in the epic, emphasizes the importance of accepting one's place in the cosmos and acknowledging the limits of human existence. Gilgamesh's acceptance of his mortality marks a turning point in the epic, as he recognizes that the best way to live a meaningful life is to leave behind a legacy that will endure. This theme of legacy is closely tied to the Sumerian belief in the importance of kingship. In Sumerian society, kings were seen as the representatives of the gods on earth, tasked with maintaining justice and order. However, as Gilgamesh's story demonstrates, even kings are not immune to the forces of nature, particularly death. Through his journey, Gilgamesh learns that true kingship lies not in the pursuit of power or immortality, but in serving the people and ensuring the welfare of the city. The Epic of Gilgamesh is also a reflection of Sumerian cultural values, particularly in the areas of law, justice, and governance. The Sumerians developed one of the earliest known legal codes, the Ur-Nammu Code, which provided a framework for justice and order in society. The Sumerians also made significant contributions to mathematics, particularly in their use of a base 60 numeral system, which is still used today in the measurement of time. In addition to their contributions to mathematics and law, the Sumerians were skilled engineers and architects known for constructing ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that served as religious temples and administrative centers. These innovations allowed the Sumerians to build thriving cities and lay the foundation for future civilizations. Despite the eventual decline of the Sumerian civilization, their cultural achievements endured, particularly through their influence on the Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian empires. The legacy of the Sumerians, especially their contributions to writing and literature, continued to shape the course of human history. The Epic of Gilgamesh itself was preserved by later civilizations and became an important part of the literary traditions of the ancient Near East. The themes explored in the epic, such as friendship, mortality, and the quest for meaning, continue to resonate with readers across time and cultures. The story of Gilgamesh, with its exploration of the human condition, remains one of the most enduring works of literature. The Sumerians, through their cultural achievements and innovations, made an indelible mark on the course of human history. Their contributions to writing, law, mathematics, and architecture laid the groundwork for future civilizations, and the Epic of Gilgamesh continues to serve as a profound reminder of the power of storytelling and the timeless human desire to understand life, death, and the meaning of existence.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, originating from the ancient Sumerian civilization, is one of the oldest and most significant pieces of literature in human history, dating back to around 2100 BCE. The Sumerians, who lived in the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, are credited with numerous innovations, including the development of cuneiform, one of the first systems of writing, which allowed them to record laws, trade, and literature. Among the various works preserved by the Sumerians, the Epic of Gilgamesh stands out not only as a work of mythic grandeur, but also as a profound exploration of the human condition, especially themes such as mortality, immortality, friendship, and the quest for meaning. The story follows Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, a city-state in ancient Mesopotamia, described as being 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Despite his extraordinary qualities, Gilgamesh is a flawed ruler, driven by arrogance, cruelty, and an overwhelming thirst for power. He oppresses his people, taking what he wants without concern for the welfare of his subjects, and this causes them to cry out to the gods for help. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals. Enkidu, untamed and untouched by human civilization, is introduced to the ways of society through Shamhat, a temple prostitute who teaches him the customs of humanity. After his transformation into a man, Enkidu travels to Uruk, where he encounters Gilgamesh. The two men engage in a fierce battle, which ends in a draw, and they recognize each other's strength and resolve. This confrontation marks the beginning of a deep friendship, one that forms the emotional core of the epic. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on several heroic quests, and their first challenge is to travel to the cedar forest, home to the monstrous Humbaba, the guardian of the sacred trees. The heroes confront Humbaba, defeat him, and cut down the sacred cedars, an act that incurs the wrath of the gods. The consequences of this victory soon manifest when the goddess Ishtar, smitten with Gilgamesh, proposes marriage to him, but he rejects her, mocking her for the ill treatment of her past lovers. In retaliation, Ishtar sends the Bull of Heaven to punish Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh and Enkidu face the Bull of Heaven in battle and slay it, further angering the gods. As punishment for their defiance, the gods decide that one of the two heroes must die. Enkidu falls ill and dies, his death a heartbreaking and painful blow to Gilgamesh, who is overwhelmed with grief and consumed by fear of his own mortality. His grief is so profound that it leads him to question the meaning of life and the inevitability of death. Unable to accept the reality of death and determined to avoid the same fate as Enkidu, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest for immortality. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, the only man granted eternal life by the gods after surviving a great flood that wiped out humanity. Utnapishtim, in telling Gilgamesh the story of the flood, reveals that immortality is a gift reserved for the gods, and it is not meant for mortals. Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights as a test, promising that if he succeeds, he will be granted eternal life. However, Gilgamesh, exhausted and emotionally drained, falls asleep almost immediately, failing the test. Utnapishtim informs him that immortality is not for humans and that the quest for eternal life is futile. The realization that he cannot escape death is a turning point for Gilgamesh. He returns to Uruk, profoundly changed, and reflects on his journey. He comes to accept that immortality is beyond his grasp, and that the true meaning of life lies in what one leaves behind. He decides that the best way to ensure his legacy is to rule his people with wisdom and compassion, building something that will endure beyond his death.
The epic concludes with Gilgamesh gazing at the city walls of Uruk, marveling at the greatness of the city he has helped build. His journey, once driven by the desire for immortality, has transformed him into a wise and just ruler, aware that the only immortality humans can achieve is through the legacy they leave behind. The Epic of Gilgamesh explores several key themes that resonate deeply with the human experience. One of the most central themes is the quest for immortality, a concept that transcends time and culture. Gilgamesh's journey to find eternal life is a reflection of the universal human desire to escape the inevitable fate of death. His quest symbolizes the struggle to find meaning and permanence in a world that is marked by transience. The epic illustrates that immortality is ultimately unattainable for humans, and that the true measure of a life is not found in avoiding death, but in the impact one has on others and the world. In this sense, Gilgamesh's journey is not only a search for immortality, but also an exploration of the importance of legacy and the human need to be remembered. Another central theme of the epic is friendship. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is one of the most poignant aspects of the story. Their friendship not only helps Gilgamesh grow emotionally, but also teaches him important lessons about loyalty, compassion, and selflessness. Through Enkidu, Gilgamesh learns to confront his own flaws and become a better person. The death of Enkidu serves as a catalyst for Gilgamesh's emotional and spiritual growth, forcing him to confront the inevitability of death and the impermanence of human life. The epic emphasizes the importance of human connection and how friendship can shape a person's character. The theme of mortality is explored in depth throughout the epic. Gilgamesh's fear of death and his quest for immortality reflect a fundamental aspect of the human condition, the awareness of our own mortality. Death in the epic is presented as an unavoidable part of life, and the narrative shows that no matter how powerful or extraordinary one might be, death is an inevitable fate. This realization forces Gilgamesh to come to terms with his limitations and to accept the transient nature of human existence. The gods in the epic play an important role in shaping the events of the story. They are portrayed as powerful, capricious beings who control the fate of mortals. Throughout the epic, Gilgamesh interacts with the gods, challenging them at times, but also seeking their favor. In the beginning, he is defiant toward the gods, refusing Ishtar's marriage proposal and slaying the bull of heaven. However, after Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh becomes humble and seeks understanding from the gods. His journey demonstrates that while humans may try to defy fate, they are ultimately subject to divine will, and their actions are shaped by forces beyond their control. The epic also reflects the Sumerian view of kingship. Kings were seen as divine representatives on earth, tasked with maintaining justice and order. Gilgamesh's initial tyranny reflects the dangers of unchecked power, but his transformation into a wise and just ruler emphasizes the ideal of kingship in Sumerian society. A ruler was expected to serve the people, not dominate them, and the epic presents a model of leadership based on wisdom, compassion, and service. In addition to its exploration of mortality and friendship, the Epic of Gilgamesh also serves as a reflection of Sumerian society and culture. The Sumerians, known for their advancements in law, mathematics, and architecture, laid the foundation for future civilizations. Their legal codes, such as the Code of Ur-Nammu, influenced the development of justice systems in later societies. The Sumerians also made important contributions to mathematics, particularly in their use of a base 60 numeral system, which is still used today in the measurement of time. Their achievements in engineering and architecture, evidenced by the construction of ziggurats and city walls, helped establish urban societies that flourished for centuries. The Sumerians' cultural legacy, including their writing system and epic literature, continued to influence later civilizations, such as the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The Epic of Gilgamesh was preserved and passed down through generations, influencing the literary traditions of the ancient Near East. The themes explored in the epic, particularly the search for immortality, the nature of friendship, and the acceptance of mortality, remain relevant today, resonating with readers across cultures and time periods. The legacy of the Sumerians, through their cultural contributions and innovations, has left an indelible mark on human history. The Epic of Gilgamesh remains a powerful reminder of the importance of living a meaningful life, leaving behind a legacy and accepting the inevitability of death. It is a timeless work that continues to inspire and challenge readers, offering profound insights into the human condition and our quest for meaning in the face of mortality.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, originating from the ancient Sumerian civilization, one of the earliest and most influential societies in human history, arose around 4000 BCE in Mesopotamia, a region situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, now modern-day Iraq. The Sumerians are credited with numerous revolutionary innovations, such as the development of the cuneiform writing system, which allowed them to document their laws, trade, and literature. Among the many works preserved by the Sumerians, the Epic of Gilgamesh stands as one of the most significant, offering profound insights into human existence. The story centers on Gilgamesh, the semi-divine king of Uruk, a city-state in ancient Mesopotamia, who is described as 2/3 god and 1/3 human. Despite his immense physical strength, wisdom, and beauty, Gilgamesh's arrogance and oppressive rule caused suffering for his people. His relentless pursuit of power and disregard for the welfare of his subjects leads the people of Uruk to cry out to the gods for relief. In response to their pleas, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals. Unaware of human society, Enkidu is introduced to civilization through Shamhat, a temple prostitute who teaches him the customs of human life. After his transformation into a man, Enkidu travels to Uruk, where he encounters Gilgamesh. The two engage in a fierce battle, neither emerging victorious, and they realize their mutual strength and respect for one another. This battle marks the beginning of a deep and transformative friendship, one that becomes the emotional core of the epic. Gilgamesh and Enkidu then embark on a series of heroic quests, with their first major challenge being a journey to the cedar forest, home to the monstrous Humbaba, the guardian of the sacred trees. The heroes confront Humbaba, defeat him, and cut down the sacred cedars, an act that incurs the wrath of the gods. In retaliation for their actions, the goddess Ishtar, smitten with Gilgamesh, proposes marriage to him. Gilgamesh rejects her, mocking her for the way she has treated her previous lovers. Furious, Ishtar sends the bull of heaven to punish Gilgamesh. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu fight and kill the bull of heaven, further provoking the gods. As punishment for their defiance, the gods decree that one of the two heroes must die. Enkidu falls ill and dies, succumbing to a painful and prolonged death that shatters Gilgamesh. His grief is overwhelming, and for the first time he is confronted by the harsh reality of mortality. Unable to accept Enkidu's death and the inevitability of his own death, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find immortality. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a man who was granted eternal life by the gods after surviving a great flood that wiped out humanity. Utnapishtim's story of survival is strikingly similar to the biblical account of Noah's Ark. Utnapishtim explains to Gilgamesh that immortality is a gift granted only to the gods and that it is not meant for humans. To test Gilgamesh's resolve, Utnapishtim challenges him to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. If he succeeds, he will be granted eternal life. Exhausted from his long journey and emotionally drained, Gilgamesh fails the test and falls asleep almost immediately.
Utnapishtim, seeing that Gilgamesh cannot achieve immortality, tells Gilgamesh that death is a natural and inescapable part of life, one that all mortals must accept. Gilgamesh, having learned this painful truth, returns to Uruk, a transformed man. He reflects on his journey, realizing that immortality cannot be achieved through defiance of death, and that the true measure of a life lies not in avoiding death, but in what one leaves behind. He decides to devote himself to ruling Uruk with wisdom and compassion, ensuring that the city prospers for future generations. The epic concludes with Gilgamesh gazing upon the great walls of Uruk, marveling at the city he has helped build, understanding that his legacy will endure long after his death. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not just a heroic tale of adventure, but also a profound meditation on the nature of life, death, and the meaning of existence. The themes explored in the epic, mortality, immortality, friendship, and legacy, are universal and resonate across time and cultures. The search for immortality, which forms the central focus of Gilgamesh's journey, represents a deep-seated human desire to escape death and find meaning in a world that is fleeting and fragile. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality symbolizes the human yearning for permanence in a world marked by change and transience. However, the epic reveals that immortality is beyond the reach of mortals, and the only form of immortality humans can achieve is through the legacy they leave behind. This realization transforms Gilgamesh, guiding him to accept death as an inescapable part of the human condition and encouraging him to focus on leaving behind a meaningful and lasting impact. One of the most important themes in the Epic of Gilgamesh is friendship. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is central to the story and forms its emotional core. Their friendship changes both men, with Enkidu helping Gilgamesh grow emotionally and morally. Through Enkidu, Gilgamesh learns the value of loyalty, love, and selflessness, and he becomes a more humble and compassionate ruler. The death of Enkidu forces Gilgamesh to confront the reality of mortality, which in turn drives him to seek a deeper understanding of life and its purpose. The relationship between the two heroes demonstrates the transformative power of friendship, showing how human connections can shape a person's character and lead to personal growth. Another key theme is the role of the gods. The gods in the Epic of Gilgamesh are portrayed as powerful and sometimes capricious beings who control the fate of mortals. At the beginning of the epic, Gilgamesh is defiant toward the gods, challenging their authority and even rejecting the goddess Ishtar. However, after Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh comes to understand the gods' power and the inevitability of death. The gods, in the Sumerian worldview, are seen as the ultimate controllers of human fate, and the epic emphasizes the idea that humans must accept their place in the universe and the will of the gods. The theme of mortality is another major aspect of the story. Death, in the epic, is presented as an inescapable fact of life. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality is ultimately futile, and he learns that no matter how great a person is, they cannot escape death. This realization is a profound moment in the epic, as it forces Gilgamesh to reevaluate his priorities and understand that the true meaning of life lies not in the desire for eternal life, but in how one lives and the legacy one leaves behind. The Sumerian civilization, with its remarkable achievements in law, architecture, and science, is also reflected in the epic. The Sumerians developed one of the earliest known legal codes, the Code of Ur-Nammu, which provided a foundation for later legal systems. Their advances in mathematics, including the base 60 numeral system, are also evident in the epic, particularly in the use of numerical symbolism. The Sumerians were also skilled architects and engineers, as demonstrated by the construction of ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that served as religious temples and administrative centers. These accomplishments helped lay the groundwork for the future development of civilizations in the ancient Near East. Despite the eventual decline of the Sumerian civilization around 2000 BCE, their cultural and intellectual contributions left a lasting impact on later societies, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The Epic of Gilgamesh remains an important and powerful reflection on the human condition, reminding us of the inevitability of death, the value of human relationships, and the importance of living a life of meaning and purpose. Through his journey, Gilgamesh learns that while immortality may be beyond our reach, the legacy we leave behind through our actions, relationships, and accomplishments is what truly endures. In this sense, the Epic of Gilgamesh serves as a timeless reminder of the value of living a meaningful life, accepting our mortality, and creating a lasting legacy for future generations.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, originating from ancient Mesopotamia, one of the earliest and most influential civilizations, is one of the oldest known works of literature, dating back to around 2100 BCE in Sumer. The story chronicles the adventures and trials of Gilgamesh, the semi-divine king of Uruk, who is described as 2/3 god and 1/3 human. Despite his exceptional strength, wisdom, and beauty, Gilgamesh is a flawed ruler, characterized by his arrogance, selfishness, and oppressive behavior toward his people. His reign brings suffering to the citizens of Uruk, prompting them to pray to the gods for intervention. In response to their pleas, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals. Enkidu, untouched by human civilization, is introduced to society by Shamhat, a temple prostitute who teaches him the ways of humans. After his transformation into a man, Enkidu travels to Uruk, where he challenges Gilgamesh to a contest of strength. The two engage in a fierce battle, neither emerging victorious, but they form a deep and transformative bond of friendship. Together, they embark on a series of daring adventures, beginning with a journey to the cedar forest, where they face the monstrous Humbaba, the guardian of the forest. The two heroes defeat Humbaba and cut down the sacred cedars, an act that brings the wrath of the gods upon them. The gods, displeased by their actions, cause trouble for the two friends. This trouble escalates when the goddess Ishtar, smitten with Gilgamesh, proposes marriage to him. Gilgamesh, rejecting her advances and mocking her for her treatment of previous lovers, infuriates Ishtar. In retaliation, she sends the Bull of Heaven to punish Gilgamesh. He and Enkidu confront the Bull of Heaven and kill it, further angering the gods. As punishment, the gods decree that one of the two heroes must die. Enkidu falls ill and dies, succumbing to a painful and lingering death that devastates Gilgamesh. His grief is overwhelming, and he is faced with the harsh truth of mortality for the first time. Unable to accept Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find the secret of immortality. His journey takes him to Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood sent by the gods to destroy humanity. Utnapishtim and his wife were granted eternal life for surviving the flood, and Gilgamesh seeks to learn from him. Utnapishtim recounts his story, one that closely mirrors the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. He tells Gilgamesh that immortality is a gift bestowed only upon the gods and is not meant for mortals. Utnapishtim, seeing the depth of Gilgamesh's desperation, tests him by challenging him to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. If he succeeds, he will be granted eternal life. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Gilgamesh fails the test and falls asleep almost immediately. Utnapishtim reveals to him that immortality is not something for humans to attain, and that death is an inescapable part of life. Gilgamesh, learning this painful truth, returns to Uruk changed by his experiences. He comes to accept that immortality is beyond his reach, and the only way to achieve a form of immortality is through the legacy one leaves behind. He reflects on his accomplishments and realizes that the greatest immortality a person can have is through the impact they have on the world and the people they leave behind.
Gilgamesh resolves to rule Uruk with wisdom and justice, focusing on improving the lives of his people and ensuring that his city endures through time. The epic concludes with Gilgamesh standing atop the walls of Uruk, marveling at the great city he has helped build. His journey, which began with a desperate search for immortality, has come to an end, and he now understands that the true meaning of life lies not in escaping death, but in the legacy one leaves behind. The Epic of Gilgamesh is more than a heroic tale. It is a meditation on the nature of existence, the inevitability of death, and the importance of leaving a lasting impact. It explores universal themes such as mortality, immortality, friendship, and the search for meaning in life. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality is a reflection of the human desire to transcend death and find permanence in an impermanent world. The epic shows that immortality, though long desired, is beyond the reach of mortals, and the only way to live on after death is through the legacy one creates. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is central to the narrative. Their friendship is transformative for both men. Enkidu teaches Gilgamesh the value of compassion, love, and selflessness, while Gilgamesh teaches Enkidu the complexities of human civilization and emotions. Through their shared experiences, Gilgamesh learns the importance of human relationships and how they can shape a person's character. The death of Enkidu is a pivotal moment in the story, forcing Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality and the fragility of life. This event sparks Gilgamesh's quest for meaning and immortality, which ultimately leads him to the realization that the search for eternal life is futile. The theme of mortality is one of the most profound elements of the epic. Gilgamesh's journey is, in many ways, a search for a way to avoid death. However, his experiences ultimately show him that death is an inescapable part of the human condition. The death of Enkidu and the revelation that immortality is reserved for the gods compel Gilgamesh to accept the limitations of human existence. The epic suggests that it is not the avoidance of death that gives life meaning, but how one lives and what one leaves behind. The role of the gods in the epic is another important aspect. The gods are portrayed as powerful, capricious beings who control the fate of mortals. They are not always benevolent, and their decisions often result in suffering for the humans they govern. However, they also show moments of mercy and kindness, as seen in Utnapishtim's decision to share the secret of immortality with Gilgamesh. The gods' involvement in the lives of mortals highlight the tension between human free will and divine control, and it is this tension that Gilgamesh grapples with throughout his journey. The Sumerian society's views on kingship are also reflected in the epic. Gilgamesh, as the king of Uruk, is portrayed as a leader who must balance his divine nature with his human responsibilities. In the beginning, he is a tyrant, using his power to oppress his people. However, as he embarks on his journey and grows through his experiences, he learns the true kingship lies in serving the people, not in domination. His journey is a path toward becoming a wise and just ruler, focused on the improvement of his people and ensuring that his city endures through time. The epic concludes with Gilgamesh standing atop the walls of Uruk, marveling at the great city he has helped build. His journey, which began with a desperate search for immortality, has come to an end, and he now understands that the true meaning of life lies not in escaping death, but in the legacy one leaves behind. The Epic of Gilgamesh is more than a heroic tale. It is a meditation on the nature of existence, the inevitability of death, and the importance of leaving a lasting impact. It explores universal themes such as mortality, immortality, friendship, and the search for meaning in life. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality is a reflection of the human desire to transcend death and find permanence in an impermanent world. The epic shows that immortality, though long desired, is beyond the reach of mortals, and the only way to live on after death is through the legacy one creates. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is central to the narrative. Their friendship is transformative for both men. Enkidu teaches Gilgamesh the value of compassion, love, and selflessness, while Gilgamesh teaches Enkidu the complexities of human civilization and emotions. Through their shared experiences, Gilgamesh learns the importance of human relationships and how they can shape a person's character. The death of Enkidu is a pivotal moment in the story, forcing Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality and the fragility of life. This event sparks Gilgamesh's quest for meaning and immortality, which ultimately leads him to the realization that the search for eternal life is futile. The theme of mortality is one of the most profound elements of the epic. Gilgamesh's journey is, in many ways, a search for a way to avoid death. However, his experiences ultimately show him that death is an inescapable part of the human condition. The death of Enkidu and the revelation that immortality is reserved for the gods compel Gilgamesh to accept the limitations of human existence. The epic suggests that it is not the avoidance of death that gives life meaning, but how one lives and what one leaves behind. The role of the gods in the epic is another important aspect. The gods are portrayed as powerful, capricious beings who control the fate of mortals. They are not always benevolent, and their decisions often result in suffering for the humans they govern. However, they also show moments of mercy and kindness, as seen in Utnapishtim's decision to share the secret of immortality with Gilgamesh. The gods' involvement in the lives of mortals highlight the tension between human free will and divine control, and it is this tension that Gilgamesh grapples with throughout his journey.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, originating from ancient Mesopotamia around 2100 BCE, is one of the oldest and most significant works of literature in human history. It follows the journey of Gilgamesh, the semi-divine king of Uruk, a city-state in ancient Sumer. Described as two-thirds god and one-third human, Gilgamesh is a strong and wise king, but his arrogance and oppressive rule lead to widespread suffering among his people. The citizens of Uruk cry out to the gods, seeking relief from his tyranny. In response, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who lives among the animals, untouched by civilization. After being introduced to human society through Shamhat, a temple prostitute, Enkidu becomes a man and journeys to Uruk. There, he confronts Gilgamesh in a battle of strength, and neither emerges victorious. However, they recognize each other's strength and form a deep and transformative bond of friendship. Together, they embark on a series of heroic quests. Their first challenge takes them to the cedar forest, where they confront the monstrous Humbaba, the guardian of the sacred trees. They defeat Humbaba and cut down the sacred cedars, an act that angers the gods. In retaliation, the goddess Ishtar proposes marriage to Gilgamesh, but he rejects her, mocking her for the treatment of her previous lovers. Enraged, Ishtar sends the Bull of Heaven to punish Gilgamesh. He and Enkidu fight and kill the Bull of Heaven, further angering the gods. As a punishment, the gods decree that one of the two heroes must die. Enkidu falls ill and dies, succumbing to a painful and lingering death. His death devastates Gilgamesh, who is overwhelmed by grief and confronted with the reality of his own mortality. Unable to accept Enkidu's death, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find the secret of immortality. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, the only man granted eternal life by the gods after surviving a great flood that wiped out humanity. Utnapishtim recounts his survival story, which closely mirrors the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. He tells Gilgamesh that immortality is a gift granted only to the gods and is not meant for mortals. Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. If he succeeds, he will be granted eternal life. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Gilgamesh fails the test and falls asleep almost immediately.
Utnapishtim reveals to him that immortality is beyond the reach of mortals, and that death is an inevitable part of life. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, changed by his journey. He reflects on his experiences and comes to accept that immortality cannot be achieved through defiance of death. He realizes that the true measure of a life lies not in avoiding death, but in the legacy one leaves behind. He decides to devote himself to ruling Uruk with wisdom and justice, ensuring that the city prospers for future generations. The epic concludes with Gilgamesh gazing at the walls of Uruk, marveling at the great city he has helped build. His journey, which began with a desperate search for immortality, ends with him understanding that the true meaning of life lies not in escaping death, but in the legacy one leaves behind. The Epic of Gilgamesh is not merely a tale of heroism and adventure. It is a profound meditation on the nature of life, death, and the human quest for meaning. The themes explored in the epic, mortality, immortality, friendship, and legacy, are universal and continue to resonate with readers across time and cultures. Gilgamesh's quest for immortality reflects a deep human desire to transcend death and find permanence in a fleeting world. However, the epic reveals that immortality is beyond the reach of mortals, and the only form of immortality humans can achieve is through the legacy they leave behind. This realization transforms Gilgamesh, guiding him to accept death as an inescapable part of the human condition, and encouraging him to focus on leaving behind a meaningful and lasting impact. Friendship plays a central role in the epic. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is the emotional core of the story. Their friendship changes both men, with Enkidu helping Gilgamesh grow emotionally and morally. Through Enkidu, Gilgamesh learns the value of loyalty, love, and selflessness, while Enkidu learns about the complexities of human life. The death of Enkidu forces Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality, setting him on a journey to discover the meaning of life and death. The relationship between the two heroes demonstrates the transformative power of friendship, showing how human connections can shape a person's character and lead to personal growth. The theme of mortality is another key aspect of the epic. Death is presented as an inevitable fact of life, something that even Gilgamesh, the mighty king, cannot escape. His quest for immortality reflects the human desire to overcome death, but through his experiences, he learns that death is an inescapable part of existence. This realization forces him to reevaluate his priorities and understand that the true meaning of life lies not in the avoidance of death, but in how one lives and the legacy one leaves behind. The gods in the epic are portrayed as powerful and sometimes capricious beings who control the fate of mortals. They are not always benevolent, and their decisions often result in suffering for humans. However, the gods also show mercy, as seen when Utnapishtim shares the secret of immortality with Gilgamesh. The gods' involvement in human affairs reflects the tension between free will and divine control, suggesting that while humans can act according to their own will, they are ultimately subject to the will of the gods. The gods' role in the epic highlights the idea that humans must accept their place in the universe and the limitations imposed on them by divine power. The epic also explores Sumerian views on kingship and leadership. Gilgamesh, as the king of Uruk, must learn to balance his divine nature with his human responsibilities. At the beginning of the story, he is a tyrant who uses his power to oppress his people. However, through his journey, he comes to understand that true kingship lies not in domination, but in serving the people and ensuring their well-being. His experiences ultimately transform him into a wiser and more compassionate ruler, dedicated to the prosperity of his people. The epic also reflects Sumerian advancements in culture and science. The Sumerians were pioneers in the development of legal codes, such as the Code of Ur-Nammu, which influenced future legal systems. They also contributed to advancements in mathematics, such as the base 60 numeral system, which is still used today in timekeeping. Their architectural achievements, including the construction of ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids, demonstrate their skill in engineering. These accomplishments laid the foundation for the growth of urban societies in the ancient Near East. Despite the eventual decline of Sumerian civilization around 2000 BCE, their cultural and intellectual contributions continued to influence later civilizations, including the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The Epic of Gilgamesh was preserved and passed down through these civilizations, influencing their literary traditions and helping to shape the development of literature in the ancient Near East. The themes of the epic, particularly its exploration of mortality, immortality, and friendship, continue to resonate with readers today. The legacy of the Sumerians, including their innovations in writing, law, and science, has had a lasting impact on the development of human civilization. Gilgamesh's journey, from a tyrannical and selfish king to a wise and compassionate ruler, mirrors the human desire for meaning and purpose. The Epic of Gilgamesh stands as a timeless reflection on the nature of life and death and the quest for meaning in the human experience. It teaches us that while we cannot escape death, we can live lives of purpose and leave behind a legacy that will be remembered for generations to come.